because we ate all the pasta we made instead of saving some for the next day. Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to my live stream. If you're new to my live stream, this is it. It doesn't get more exciting than this. It doesn't get more interesting than this. I'm going to sit here. I'm going to paint some of these motherfuckers. And they'll be done. So, 1, 2, 3. I got a bunch to paint. But these guys are done. My cat is wound for sound today. So, get these guys done. I got some more of the smaller discs. They're smaller than the bigger ones, but I like these for the smaller ones, so I'm going to paint this, and this. At least that's the idea. Probably not. I am exhausted. Ghetto is wound up, but he's my man, so we can forgive him for that. This is not doing it for me. The teeth are fine, the rest is just not. So I'll put that to the side until I figure out WTF I'm gonna do with it. Or repaint it or something. I don't know how to paint this one either, so I don't want to do anything complicated today, so this was pink the last time I made it, so we're gonna go with that. Oh dear. I didn't mean to leave everything in water. I got most of my garden in today, so hopefully I can finish that up tomorrow. Huzzah. Oh, right. Listening material. Let's start something random. Where's the remote? Here it is. Let's see if dog food is good for you.
Treat that actually smells kind of delicious. Or have you seen your dog eat their food and think, wait, that looks kind of good enough for me? Nah, I shouldn't. Unless... Hello, Internet! Welcome to Food Theory, the show where we listen to your food confessions and we don't judge. Here's a confession of my own. I've recently become a Costco person. So I was walking through Costco the other day, like I do now, and when running for a brand new snack by a literal pallet of seriously flipping great, I saw 2 pounds of these delicious-looking Zoni bars. This tempting beef stick recipe claimed to be a protein-packed snack with berries and flax, and it's dog food. Dang it! Hear me out. This is actually a fairly recent trend that's been growing like crazy for the last 2 years. Marketing pet food just like human food. They're using the same catchphrases like gluten-free, highlighting protein benefits, and putting premium ingredients in a way that is mirroring the market for our food. And some of the meals seem practically indistinguishable from human equivalents. Heck, my dog is on this super fancy diet of food because he's
Hi guys. Oh, hello Black Cat.
And I'm not gonna lie, the smell is kind of tempting. All of this got me thinking, well...
Just doing some paint tonight. You're welcome to hang out if you like, or step back and pop in every once in a while and see how it's going.
Exclusive. Which one is the best for us? Can we survive, thrive, and keep our healthy coat of fur? Or are all of them bad for us and they'd have to flush you down the toilet like a goldfish kind of way? Well, stick around because there's one animal food that is surprisingly good for you and might be a go-to snack to share with your pet whenever you want. You might not know this,
I'm gonna say it's carrots, probably.
Pretty much the same way human food is. The FDA started overseeing pet food all the way back in 1938. Surprising, honestly, that they dedicated time to this during the Great Depression. Didn't have anything more pressing to deal with, I guess. At the time, most dog food was made out of horse meat. By World War II, canned horse meat was flying off the shelves so fast, dog food manufacturers were breeding and slaughtering 50,000 horses a year. So, at the very least, eating dog food was not safe for horses.
Hello.
To change things. The world at large, obviously.
This is it. This is exciting as I get.
See, when metal for canning needed to be rationed, pet food was given the distinction of being non-essential. So, dry food surged in popularity, not just for people, but for pets. It was actually cereal makers who got creative and invented the dry kibble we know today by the 1950s. In the 60s, the Pet Food Institute launched ad campaigns about how kibble was the healthiest way to feed your pets. And the rest was basically history. It became the gold standard. Those standards have only increased over the years, especially recently. In 2011, the Food Safety Modernization Act created new requirements for both pet food and human food manufacturers, mostly focused on preventing the spread of foodborne illnesses. Since then, there's been something of an explosion of boutique pet food makers promoting health and wellness in our canine and feline friends, and a big swing in the industry in recent years has been toward human-grade pet food. For a short time, this was just a marketing buzzword, but in 2023, the Association
Introducing Full Tank Active. New styles, new colors, new stretch, new feel. Full Navy, new moves.
Probably should. Okay, wasn't me. I know, thrilling. Try to contain yourselves, chat room.
Excel, do what feels fresh.
Association of American
Oh yeah, the tongue should be done.
Officials, which oversees
There we
pet
go.
food labels,
That
came
dry
up
for
with
now.
new guidelines for the term. According to AFCO, human grade denotes that it is technically fit for human consumption because it's both edible and was manufactured and packaged in a facility that met federal regulation standards. All of that to say, humans can eat it. See, I'm not the only crazy thinking about this, but edible isn't exactly synonymous with can sustain human life, though. So let's talk about the necessary elements of a human diet: water, proteins, fats, carbohydrates, minerals, and vitamins. Every living thing needs some balance of these to support their internal anatomy and bodily function. How much they need largely determines their natural
want this to be
size. There are
purple.
certain things that humans
Where's the
synthesize or
purple?
produce naturally in our anatomy, but more importantly, things that we
You need to
don't,
get over
and
here
this
so I don't
is
hear you.
we or
Hi,
animals
Kitty.
ingest
Oh my
food.
God, you backed
So all
around up.
animals in the animal kingdom can keep doing their thing. Raccoons can keep raiding your trash bin, cats can keep meowing even though they've been fed, and squirrels can do that super
So,
thing
the cat that's been coming over apparently is not a stray. She has a home. And, she just comes over for extra snacks. I mean, I assumed she wasn't a stray, so.
For the most part, people are familiar with the idea that protein equals muscles, but it's the how that's important to us right now. You see, your body breaks proteins down into amino acids. We need 20 amino acids to do our thing, but there are certain amino acids that we can only get through eating food because our bodies don't synthesize them on our own. How much protein do you actually need, though? This can be all over the map, especially if you're
I gotta.
But when we're talking about survival, the
God, you're wound up
recommendation is
tonight.
that somewhere between 10 to 35% of your daily calories should be from protein, which should make up the biggest percentage of your diet. However, are carbohydrates found in vegetables, fruits, and starches because they are our biggest energy producers. According to nutritionists, these should make up between 45 to 65% of their daily calories. Fats, which help us absorb vitamins and minerals we need for bodily functions, should make up a similar percentage of your diet as protein, around 20 to 35% of our calories. Speaking of calories, the number is different for everybody, but the average human needs anywhere between 1,600 and 3,000 calories a day. If you're talking about a bare minimum for survival, dietitians and nutritionists seem to agree the absolute minimum is somewhere in the neighborhood of 1,200 calories a day. Anything less than 1,000 will apparently produce the same physiological effects as starvation. That's when you'll start to see all sorts of negative side effects like fatigue, depression, hair loss, excessive weight loss, poor sleep, and a weakened immune system. So, yeah, don't do that. Now that we have a baseline for human macros and caloric needs, let's get back to the burning question. Which pet foods could we consume? Well, the thing is, there were actually some surprises when we took a look at several common pets. There are a couple that won't be so good for you. Like, really not good for you in a you're gonna get cancer type of way. First up, it will kill you one. Fish food is gonna be a giant no-no. Seriously. For starters, fish need a wildly different balance of vitamins and minerals than we do, which is gonna make for all kinds of preservatives we aren't meant to be eating. Most notably, sodium nitrite, which has been linked to causing cancer in excessive amounts of humans. On top
getting
of
your
that,
medicine
fish food
tomorrow.
isn't produced with the same safety guidelines. So fish products could have a higher likelihood of dangerous bacteria for humans. So if you don't want died from fish food in your obituary, or your obituary in general, maybe steer clear of this one. If you are feeling fishy though, guess what has a lot of fish in it typically? Cat food. Because there's a ridiculously wide array out there, we'll hit the generic stuff first. What most people think of when they think
What?
of common, affordable cat food with potentially questionable
What has got you
ingredients.
wound up
Anyway,
tonight?
Meow Mix. A cup of Meow Mix original choice dry food clocks in at 310 calories, meaning you'd need at least 4 cups of it per day to meet your body's most basic requirements. That comes with a macro breakdown of about 31% protein and 11% fat. It's also shockingly high in carbs. Not great for your cat, but actually ideal for us in the 35 to 50% range. Most big brand dry cat foods are going to be made up of similar
What?
components. Just like with human food, most of the contenders out there copy the leading brand. Purina's dry food, for instance, was similar but with small adjustments to the ratios and maybe different vitamin boosts. Now, at first glance, this actually seems like a decent start, but there's a big difference between us and cats that may be the killer here. Cats are obligate carnivores, meaning they can't synthesize amino acids and proteins from plants in the same way that herbivores or omnivores like us can. But it also means they can synthesize vitamin C in their liver, so they don't need any of that in their diet. In fact, any more can be dangerous. We do, unless we want to get scurvy. Another key cat and human diet difference, their bodies don't naturally produce the important amino acid taurine, so they need to ingest it in the form of animal protein, and they don't need as many carbs. They also require 2 to 3 times more protein than omnivores.
Oh,
That means
hello. I
cat
forgot
diet
about you.
macros should be somewhere around 50% protein and only a tiny bit of carbs. Unfortunately, this can rule out another animal people have taken a liking to, ferrets. In a bit of a twist, yeah, at least for me, since I couldn't begin to tell you where ferrets are from or what kind of food they eat, ferrets are quite like cats in terms of diet. Like cats, these adorable little hunters are obligate carnivores. So high-quality cat or kitten food is sometimes considered a substitute for ferrets to eat in the short term. I can't tell if this makes them more cute or more creepy. Regardless, chowing down
Oh, I forgot about this guy.
Looks
Looks like I'm working on him right now.
With fish, cats, and ferrets out of the way, it's time to take a look.
As soon as I find the right dotting tool.
Big generic dry dog food brands fall a little more closely in line with human diets. Both Purina and Iam's brand kibbles check out with our dietary ratios. These brands also have around 350 to 400 calories per cup. So like cat food, you're gonna have to eat multiple cups of it per day just to keep the engine going, which really isn't too big of a deal. On a 2,400 calorie a day diet, that's like 2 cups for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Flavor notwithstanding. Those golden macro similarities between dogs and humans shouldn't be too much of a surprise. Dogs, like humans, are omnivores, meaning they can synthesize the things they need nutritionally from both plant and animal matter. Dogs need more protein and amino acids than we do, mostly to support those shiny fur coats. Percentage-wise, their macros look surprisingly like ours, in a similar zone across protein, carbs, and fat. However, that doesn't mean that dog diets and human diets are exactly alike per se. There are some critical differences, which brings us to our other nutrient categories, vitamins and minerals. Vitamins and minerals fall in their own special categories.
I don't know.
But rather are found in food. There's 13
I guess I can
essential
improvise,
vitamins
but
needed for our
it's
body
kind of
to function.
disappointing. I thought it was a bit more organized this time around.
Vitamins that can be absorbed by fat,
Oh.
vitamins A, D, E, and K, and vitamins that can be absorbed by water, C, and all the B. It's critical to get a healthy amount of all of these, but the deficiencies most linked to fatality are vitamin D and B12, so they're arguably a little more important. Minerals are divided into major and minor minerals, depending on the roles they play. Major minerals include things like magnesium, calcium, potassium, and sodium, while minor minerals include iron, iodine, fluoride, and zinc. Like vitamins, it's important to get the appropriate amounts of minerals for any number of bodily functions. However, if you're keeping score, the mineral deficiencies that are most commonly associated with premature death are iron, calcium, and iodine. So dog food seems to cover our macros, but does it support our vitamin and mineral needs? Well, yes and no. For one, like cats, dogs produce vitamin C naturally in their liver, so it won't be present in dry kibbles at all. However, is much faster than ours, requiring way more vitamins. So their food has to account for this. Forget those daily supplements, gym bros. Just eat some kibble. Duh. Seriously, most dog food is packed with vitamin supplements. The leading brands of dog kibbles we mentioned earlier are all supplemented with healthy doses of vitamin A, B, D, and E. Iron and iodine are also supplemented to a degree that should meet human needs as long as we're ingesting multiple servings, along with calcium. That covers dry food. But the place where dog food really excels over cat food, beyond just nutritional numbers and percentages, wet food. Because canned dog food meals are actually fairly close in consistency and ingredients to canned human food. Apparently, Hill Science Diet Savory Stew with chicken and vegetables isn't too bad. Just like eating a human chicken and veggie stew. Plus, human-like ratios for 28% protein, 19% fat, at 330 calories in the can. If you close your eyes, it's not that different from eating a Campbell's chunky soup. Oh, I'm gonna be sick. Plus, some survival blogs out there have done taste tests and ranked it at the top for its fetching flavor. But if you want to avoid a Scooby-Doo type mystery when it comes to ingredients, there's one area of pet food we haven't talked about in depth yet: human grade, which is where the real nutritional magic lies. Is it actually good enough for us to eat, or is it just more fancy marketing speak? Again, the wet food is going to have the advantage here. There's several really good options out there, and they actually sound kind of delicious. One of the best options would...
Is your garden trying to tell you something? Sunlight and water can't satisfy your garden's hunger, so feed them Miracle Grow and see the difference. Satisfy your garden's hunger with Miracle Grow.
The Ferrero Rocher chocolate bar. Crunchy hazelnuts, smooth chocolate, creamy filling. Make any moment worth celebrating. Ferrero Rocher.
We researched in terms of overall ingredients and human macro goals was Nom Nom Brand's Turkey Fare recipe.
Nom
The main
Nom
ingredients,
Brand.
brown turkey, brown rice, eggs, carrots, and spinach. Dang! I just added all of that to my grocery list. This brand also has close to that golden nutrient ratio for humans. 35% protein, 17% fat, and 38% carbohydrates. That is a lean and mean pre-prepped meal. Similarly delicious sounding is the Farmer's Dog turkey recipe. The main ingredients of which include turkey, chickpeas, carrots, broccoli, and spinach. 33% protein, 18% fat, and 39% carbohydrates. That ratio, though. Seriously, why are these dogs eating better than the rest of us? If you're not looking for the cold stuff, though, there's also human-grade dried dog food to the rescue. That's right, fancy kibble. First up is the Spot and Tango Unkibble. Freeze-dried kibble that are a bit low in fat, but boy does it smell good. This is the type that Genji actually eats every day, and I have to admit, I've thought about snagging a couple of bites. And I'm not the only one. Back in 2020, a man ate nothing Munster milling dog food for 30 days. Apparently, that guy lost more than 20 pounds and said he felt fantastic. To be fair, he was also the CEO of the company, so he was definitely trying to sell people on the health benefits. But hey, he did it and he turned out fine. In the short to medium term, not much would happen to your body if you switched over to your dog's food, according to veterinary nutritionists. In other ways, eating dog food is just like eating a small meal. This may seem like a slam dunk, but it's food theory. You know it's never that simple. Because I said earlier that nothing would happen in the short to medium term, but the long term is a different story. And we're not looking for the best pet food to snack on, we're looking for the best pet food to survive on. The big problem with dog food is vitamin K3, a synthetic vitamin in most dog foods, which is potentially toxic to humans in the long term. So chowing down on this for months and months can cause your blood cells to rupture and turn your skin yellow. Not good. So back to the drawing board. And we're kind of running out of plausible pets. I mean, we could look at snake food, but that's a lot of mice, and you'd probably die of vitamin A toxicity. But not all hope is lost, because there is one pet food that's the key. That's right, your potential new secret snack, hamster food. Since the bulk of hamster diets include things like seeds, fruits, nuts, and veggies, their bagged up pet food is actually not bad at all. In fact, it may be a bit of a grocery hack. Higgins Sunburst Gourmet Gerbil and Hamster Food is basically a bag of fancy trail mix with ingredients like yellow peas, flaked carrots, flaked corn, pumpkin seeds, coconut, raisins, apples, cashews, papaya, and pineapple. Plus, it's got vitamins D and B, calcium, iodine, and iron supplements. Given hamsters' caloric needs compared to our own, one 2.5-pound bag of Higgins comes out to somewhere in the neighborhood of 1,350
Everybody got their
calories.
spots?
Kind of perfect for a minimum day's worth of food, with protein, fat, and carbs all in an acceptable range. Even if it is a bit on the low end for protein, Higgins comes in 2.5-pound bags or 25-pound bags, which would be a whopping 10 days worth of food. While this may seem like a surprise at first glance, it makes sense when you think about it a little. There's a reason hamsters are used in various trials and experiments, and a lot of that has to do with the physiology that's got some strong similarities to humans on a metabolic level. Now, that's not to say that this goes both ways. There's a lot of human foods that hamsters can't eat, but they can go nuts and chew on their pellets. Hamster food, well done. It's basically like existing on a plant-based diet, which a lot of humans are already doing. Look at Amy. Although, if you get yourself one of those human-sized hamster wheels, they'll probably need to be downing a lot more calories. But hey, that's just a theory. A food theory. Buen provecho. And hey, if you want more, make sure to click the link on the screen now. And as always, I'll see you next week.
The teaser trailer for Five Nights at Freddy's 2 has finally dropped, and it managed to pack so much about its plot in just 50 seconds. Enough to solve this movie months before it's out.
Nope. I've already heard that one. Give me something new. Probably not. Sure, we'll go with a horror.
The creator of The Boiled One and the Oddity Compendium is back with a brand new analog horror video that picks up the earliest bits of lore he ever created.
Oh, this doesn't really look like
terrifying new videos got me
anything.
asking,
Shit.
what the heck is Smilehood?
Alright, can't do you. How
Hello,
about
Internets.
her
Welcome to
voice?
Film Theory, the show that's turning 10 years old this month. Yeah, really. On June 2nd, 2015, Matt, Steph, and the rest of the team launched this brand new channel, bringing our unique brand of overthinking to the film and television industry. I've actually been a part of this channel since the very beginning, believe it or not. I was both a writer and editor for Theorist in these early days of Film Theory. I worked on multiple videos in and around the launch. In fact, Matt first told me about Film Theory when I first joined the team, back when the idea of a channel dedicated to theories about movies was really novel. Man, how times have changed. Anyway, we have something really cool planned to celebrate the 10th anniversary of Film Theory later in the year that we just couldn't quite get done in time for June. But I wanted to call it out all throughout the month. A lot of awesome people have poured their blood, sweat, heart, and tears into Film Theory, and it's just such an honor to be a part of it. And one of the big things Film Theory has always covered is independent analog horror, and today is no different, loyal theorists, as we dive into Smilehood, the latest project from Dr. Nowhere. If you don't know, Dr. Nowhere is a man named Silas Orion, one of the incredible newer analog horror creators here on YouTube, though he has a years-long and very impressive catalog of work over on other platforms like Instagram. I gotta say, I just love his art style. It strikes that right balance of familiar, surreal, and uncanny that just hits perfect for unsettling horror. Silas exploded onto the YouTube scene last year with a video called The Boiled One, which he followed up with the Oddity Compendium. We actually did theories about both of those last year, go check them out, and I've been itching to jump back into more of Silas's work. Really, I was just waiting for the right time, and oh boy, has the right time ever arrived. Bursting into the room like a freaking jump scare, my guys. Just a few weeks ago, Silas released Smilehood Conception, a brand new video that's, well, okay, this one's weird. There's a lot of very surreal imagery and atmospheric music, but most importantly, it features the return of the Locust, a monstrous entity that first appeared in Silas's earliest videos here on YouTube. Yeah, just absolutely creepy stuff, right? I'm gonna be upfront with you here, loyal theorists. We don't have all the answers for this one yet. We are truly getting in on the ground floor of this new story, and I want to solve it with you. I want us to go through each of these videos in this series so far together. Look at all of the clues and symbolism we can find and try to figure out what the heck is going on here in Smilehood. And just from the pieces I've been able to put together so far, this is a tragic story of loss, resulting in a monster that eats you from your very phone and computer screens. Alright, let's work together, loyal theorists, and dive into the mystery of the Locust and Smilehood. So, as always, let's run through the videos to start with so we're all on the same page about what's going on and break down what we can along the way. And the first video in the series is actually the very first one that Dr. Nowhere uploaded to his channel, Concept Toe 1. Honestly, this one is pretty straightforward. We see some entity in a room with beige wallpaper. It's giving like desaturated back rooms, and I love it. The entity, which has been dubbed the Locust, is looking straight at us through the screen, and it's slapping the glass. Yeah, there's a creepy blackened human hand repeatedly slamming the glass, cracking it, but the video cuts off just before it's completely shattered. And honestly, just really quick before we keep going, I have to say, I love the way Silas has mixed mediums here. The unsettling art he made combined with the almost rotoscope human hand is really cool and just really accomplishes the horror feel. The second video, Concept Toe 2, has a bit more meat when it comes to the actual events happening on screen. Here, we open on someone filming either a window or a screen or something like that, and on the other side is the Locust, who keeps saying hello. Incredibly creepy. The person filming says hello back, but doesn't really get a reaction. Eventually, and understandably, he asks the Locust to just go away, but is also like the chillest man ever about it.
Please go away.
Like, I don't know about you, but I just have like a little bit more urgency in my voice there, but, you know, whatever. Anyway, the Locust eventually starts slapping against the glass of the monitor or window or whatever, scaring the person filming. The glass shatters, and the Locust enters the room, chases the person filming to a closet where he hides, but the Locust finds him and eventually charges him. The narrator almost certainly dies here. Finally, we end on a broken screen with text reading, "The body appears untouched." Then we have the third video, unsurprisingly named Concept Toe 3. Here we open on what looks like old photographs of some strange room and art made by kids. It's very vintage, very Instagram circa 2012. And just to note, this looks like the same wallpaper we saw in the background of the Locust in the first video. We're told to get up, to rise and shine, and that good children are up bright and early. good children do play pretend, but do not play with their food until it's all gone. All throughout this part of the video, we see images of the locust interspersed with everything else that we see, as well as a heart dangling inside of the same room with the locust. The video then suddenly cuts to an old school AIM-esque chat log between the point of view character and someone named Dominic9999. However, is acting
I want to do
Dominic
yellow.
has been more distant lately, and this typing has become...
I don't have to make each one a different color. I just,
POV
I like it when I do.
I'm seriously worried because of it. Despite it being 1 a.m., Dominic asks for a video chat, which the POV reluctantly agrees to. However, when he answers the call, it's not Dominic, it's the locust. Clearly, the locust has taken over Dominic somehow, and now he's come for this POV character too. The screen cuts out, and we again see the same beating heart. As captions read, none of it makes any sense. Everything inside was gone. So, okay, let's take a step back here and go over everything that's happened and what we can figure out from it, because once we get into Smilehood, things get way weirder. First off, somehow the locust is moving from place to place through computer screens. When I first watched Toe 2, I wasn't sure if this was supposed to be a monitor or like a window or something else, but after Toe 3, this is absolutely a computer screen, and this is actually further confirmed in the Instagram version of Toe 1. Here, the caption reads, "The thing that is trapped behind a screen that will eat your organs if it breaks out." So, makes sense, and that's why he's slapping against the glass. The second part of that caption also explains why the locust is even doing this, going from place to place and killing these people. And also, the captions in the videos suddenly make a lot more sense, right? Quote, "The body appeared untouched, and everything inside was gone." Clearly, though the exterior of these bodies remains somewhat intact, the locust is harvesting their inner organs. I also wouldn't be surprised if the hand we saw in the first video, the one that was like strangely human looking, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if that was literally an arm that the locust stole. But why? Why is the locust going from place to place, screen to screen, taking these organs? Simple. He hungers. During the AIM chat, we see the locust explains that he's starving. Hell, seems pretty straightforward, and this actually even fits with the name. Locust insects are known to emerge in giant swarms and consume crops. They can cause serious damage to a community's agriculture, so the fact that the locust in this series is doing the same, but to people, it just makes sense. Also, while we're on the subject, you know how I just said that the locust said that he was starving? Hell, well, that was actually the old name of the original video, Toe 1. Yeah, actually, the names for all 3 of these videos have since changed. Originally, back when I was first looking into them, doing research for the boiled one, Toe 1, 2, and 3 were called Starving.Help, Love.Thumper, and Making.Friends, respectively. Silas has since gone back and renamed them to the consistent Toe 1, 2, 3 naming scheme. And I'm not sure we can call any of that old information canon anymore. But it is worth noting regardless. And one more thing to note before we move on here, but a detail that you might have missed, these videos are being watched by someone. And I don't mean us, the viewer on YouTube. In both Toe 2 and Toe 3, there are moments where we see an old school volume bar on the screen, as if someone is turning up or down the volume. Someone watching these tapes back. But who? Well, in the description of each of these videos, it says, courtesy of the Organet Enterprise. T-O-E. Get it? Toe? The Organet Enterprise is clearly some sort of organization collecting information about the locust, and perhaps other similar entities and anomalies. There isn't a ton of proof of this yet, but I wouldn't be surprised if this was an organization similar
I can't hold you without smudging you.
branch from the boiled one video. So, okay, how does any of this connect to the new video, Smilehood? Well, let's dive into it, loyal theorists, because this one is strange. Smilehood is way more non-linear and experimental than the other Toe videos, so we're going to be jumping around here a little bit to move up a lot of what it shows, just to get more context for things. We start out with what looks like an old-school television set flashing. In the static, we can see things like the locust in its room, but maybe more interestingly, I might be seeing things here, but I think you can see a face in the reflection of a TV here. It might just be some artifacting or something else weird going on, but given the fact that we've established that something is watching these other tapes, I wanted to point it out. Here, you can see it a little bit more clearly if you lower the contrast and up the brightness, but anyway, moving on. Suddenly, the TV switches to a weird slideshow of several buildings. Some look like apartment complexes,
There we go.
others like other
Let that dry.
buildings. One of them has a sign reading Smilehood Institute for Exceptional Children. Now, that name might look familiar to you, partially because it's the title of the video, but also because we've seen it before. before. In Toe 3, there was an ad for something called Smilehood embedded into the old school AIM chat service. This one looked way more like some sort of toy, or at least something that came inside of a box instead of an institute though. I wonder if Smilehood in this world is some sort of multi-conglomerate brand. Like, you know how in our world that Disney has their brand of movies, and hotels, and parks, and the like? Maybe Smilehood is similar here. Anyway, all of these buildings clearly look like
Back
some
to
sort of
whatever the
school
fuck I was
or
doing.
for gifted
I painted
or
something pink. Where'd it go? Over there. All right.
I bet that a lot of these images are supposed to be of the Smilehood complex. For example, one of them has a basketball hoop on the side of one of the buildings. It would just make sense for that sort of thing to be in a communal home or school like Smilehood. The television from earlier also has like a sticker or a pin that looks like a flower on it, so it could be inside of Smilehood or some way related to it. Either way, that one does feel like it's in a child's room of some sort. Right? On the other side of things, though, we also get a bunch of images of very rural-looking buildings and deserts, a small home in a field, and animated shots of a barren wasteland, and a farmhouse out in the desert. There are a lot of these shots. The one with the dead tree cut down in the sand, its branches gnarled and looking almost like the locust. There's also a fly that buzzes by here, which may or may not be a nod to the entity, but in any way. There's a man in a couple of these shots, looking out over the cliff
Like
in the
he's
desert behind
flickering.
the farmhouse. Another shot shows him inside at a table, looking at some sort of paper. On the wall in this shot, we can see a photograph of the man and a woman holding onto him affectionately. This could either be his wife or daughter, but I'm going to guess wife just because of how they're framed. Anyway, this man's name is likely Arlo Bloom. The very last shot of the video shows this man much older while we hear this voiceover. And also, Arlo just looks much creepier here in this shot, like his face is sunken in and he's twitching a lot. Something ain't right with this man. Intercut with all of these shots are several images and clips of the locust entity trapped in his room next to a giant beating heart. In some instances, he's calling out hello over and over.
There was a crow in my yard. It's not one of my usual crows. And it talks to me. When I'm working in the garden or outside, I'll hear, hello, hello, hello. Like, what the fuck? I look it up and she's looking down at me. Like, I'd feel better if you just cawed. Thank you. Don't need to try and speak my language. Please don't try to speak my language.
They say you need a savings account for interest, and a checking account for everyday use. Then they charge you fees on both. How about one account that does both?
But in others, he's just sitting alone in silence. Though he does seem to notice us watching and look straight to the camera. There's also a shot of what looks like a bunch of organic tissue or tubes, and what looks like the bottom of a chin. I think that this is the inner workings of the locust, but I mean, it is a little bit hard to tell just from what we see
I don't
here.
know.
Elsewhere in the video, we also see a couple of shots of flowers, and I'm not just talking about the sticker on the TV from the beginning. When we first see them, they're stuck into the ground next to this lake or ocean. Almost looks like they were put there by a couple or family or something. But later on, the second time we see a flower, it's all by itself, off in the distance. This struck me way more like some sort of grave marker than a plant. Though I did have a bit of trouble pinpointing exactly what these are supposed to be, from my closest estimation, these flowers look like yellow roses. If you don't know, flowers have a whole language of symbolism associated with them in literature and mythology. And, interestingly, yellow roses are supposed to represent joy and happiness. So, isn't it fascinating that we see the number of flowers continuing to dwindle as the video goes on? It's also worth calling out that in the shot of the single flower off in the distance, the one that kind of looked like a grave, connecting some dots here, but perhaps the woman in the picture we talked about earlier, the one with Arlo, well, what if she was killed? That would kind of make sense to bury her and then have
That's
this flower
blue.
marking that grave. Right?
I don't know,
If
it
that
seems
is
to be
the
on a
case,
blue
what killed
phase.
her? Well,
No,
in
I
this
want
shot,
purple.
we see a tree and its branches in the foreground. And on that tree, we see a locust. It's in the insect. It's haunting the space over this grave. So, is this symbolic of that locust entity causing that death? And just before we move on here, but there is a final shot of a single flower inside of a vase that's been knocked to the ground. But honestly, this flower looks way different from any of the other ones we've seen in the series. If I had to guess, this one is actually a Turnera. Notice how they both have 5 petals. In flower symbology, the Turnera is meant to represent beauty and endurance, which makes this one in the vase grayed out and almost withering away a bit more ironic. doesn't it? Now, flowers aren't the only weird symbolic thing in this video either. At one point, we see a shot of a fruit in the dirt with a big bite taken out of the bottom of it. At first, I thought that this might be some sort of like a red onion or something. I mean, they do have layers, but the looked at it, the more I actually think that this is a pomegranate. Notice how both this and a real pomegranate have the weird area at the top where a stem would come out of it, and the inside of this fruit in Smilehood looks juicy, for the lack of a better word. That's very in line with pomegranates, and would also fit with the horror element of the series, because I mean, the interior of a pomegranate just looks, well, it looks bloody. That really just works with a series about a monster stealing organs, right? Anyway, just like flowers, a lot of fruit also have symbolic meanings, and a pomegranate's meaning, fertility, life, and rebirth. So, this fruit having a big old bite taken out of it before being discarded in the dirt, it's like something has taken a bite out of something's life and thrown it away. Maybe like the locust and that woman. Food for thought, you could say. So, okay, that was kind of a lot, and it was really weird. But what's the story here? What can we put together from all of these small, scattered, disparate pieces? Well, I believe that Arlo Bloom was in charge of, or some employee of the Smilehood Institute. He had a loving wife, someone important in his life that brought him a lot of joy, just like we see symbolized with the yellow roses. The locust, however, may have been some sort of child at the Smilehood Institute, someone twisted and mutated into this monstrosity. How that happened, I can't say, but at the very least, I can say that he is a kid, and there's a ton of evidence for that. First off, throughout the videos, we see several shots of a toy inside of the locust's room. This is one of those activity cubes, which has different functions on each side to keep a young child's attention. At least here in the States, I remember these things popping up at the dentist or doctor's offices in the lobby to keep toddlers occupied. So it would make sense for somewhere like Smilehood to have these toys, and therefore that the locust would also have one if he's a kid at the Institute. Secondly, remember how I said that the titles and descriptions for all of these videos with the locust change? Well, originally the description for Making.Friends read, "It's a kid in there," presumably talking about the locust. This would also explain why he wants to make friends, his childish way of speaking, how he's constantly craving attention and calling out hello. It all just makes sense as something else is. And I might even go out on a limb here and say that the locust is Arlo Bloom's very own child. In that same shot, there's a photo of Arlo with his wife. You also see one of a male figure playing an instrument. It kind of looks like a horn or a saxophone or something. That could be Arlo herself playing the instrument, but this really reminded me of the sort of photos you would have of your child while they're in a school band or something like that. But the thing that really cements this connection between Arlo and the locust...
I know, I'm just globbing it on at this point.
Father and child. In the shot where we see Arlo looking out over the desert, take a listen to the sounds of nature in the background. Do you hear that sort of insect chirping? That is a locust, like the real world bug. But here, compare it to this. At the very least, Silas is drawing a direct connection between Arlo and the locust here. And like I said in my analysis of the actual video, that connection is almost certainly the loss of Arlo's wife, perhaps at the hands of the locust itself. This would explain the symbolism we see with the flowers and the pomegranate. This child of Arlo and his wife, represented by rebirth in the pomegranate, has killed his wife, thus taking away Arlo's joy. And now, Arlo's basically lost his sanity because of it. Silas draws a lot of symbolism in his videos from darker human emotions like fear and guilt, like we see in videos like The Boiled One and Boy in the Bath. And that's probably playing a role
Boy in the
this
Bath?
story too.
Ooh.
The locust representing that sort of grief of losing a loved one. Again, there's a lot here that I don't think we can quite put together yet, or at least I couldn't. Like, there are a few pieces I noticed that I don't know where they quite go yet. For example, there are
I know I glopped it on, but it's yellow, and yellow doesn't cover very well.
Here because I wasn't sure just how stable they were. And in tow 2, after the volume on the tape is turned down all the way, we hear a heartbeat. That tells me that whoever was watching this video back was terrified of the locust, which, I mean, fair, he's scary. But there's also a giant heart next to the locust in his room. And that seems like more than a coincidence to me, even if I can't...
Orange. I haven't done an orange one yet.
The locust is the one watching the videos of his own murders? Is he the face that I caught a glimpse of in the reflection of that TV? I'm just not quite sure yet, and I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments.
we'll
If you're
give it a
able to
try.
connect some of these dots, then I'm just not seeing.
No, I'll just
Either
mix
way,
up
I
another
know
one.
that Silas is just adding so much into the story, and I just cannot wait to see where he goes with it. But until then, remember, it's all just a theory. A film theory. And thanks for attending, guys. Up next on Film Theory.
I know I'm just using a lot of primary colors, but what I have access to.
And he exposes us to new monstrous beings.
Let's give that a coat first, see how it looks.
If you're someone that suffers from having sensitive teeth, but you want them whiter, I recommend Sensodyne Vocal White.
Introducing Old Navy Active. New styles, new colors, new stretching, new feels. Old Navy, new moves.
Twisted Tea fans love the smooth, refreshing taste of Twisted Tea. Made with real brewed tea and just the right kick of lemon flavor. Twisted Tea. Good times with a twist.
Lacey Games is one of the most disturbing franchises we've ever covered. This is normally where I put in a joke or a light-hearted comment, but today is not the day for that. What initially appears as a bright and colourful set of flash games for young girls quickly reveals a dark story of trauma, along with the very sad and very real issues that can cause it. This theory is not for the faint of heart, but if you are willing to keep going, there's a fascinating story waiting for you. You have been warned.
Sure if I like the orange. I like orange. It's not if I like this
Game
orange.
Theory, the show that really misses good old-fashioned flash games. Nothing can scratch that nostalgic itch, quite like going back through Newgrounds and finding that game you used to play almost 20 years ago. But clearly I'm not the only one feeling nostalgic for this era of gaming, because recently a new YouTube series has popped up from the YouTube Ghost Hunter about an old flash series that no one has heard of, Lacey Games. The reason no one has heard of it? Well, because it never really existed. Yeah, this is a Petscop situation, where we follow the Let's Plays of a user as they document an old series of flash games from their childhood. Except, these aren't real games. Despite what you may have seen YouTubers playing online, the only true versions that exist are on Ghost Tundra's channel as part of this series. Why are we talking about a YouTube series here on Game Theory rather than Film Theory? Maybe if Lee wasn't so busy stealing my stuff, then I wouldn't have to steal this from him.
Oh, what's that? I couldn't hear you over all these great video game movies.
This series is also about games, whether they're real or not, so it does feel like it fits here on Game Theory. Though, as you can probably guess, not all is as it seems. Initially, it's just a series of simulator games that would belong on any Flash website, things like dress-up sims, cooking sims, pet grooming sims, and makeup sims. But when the videos uploader digs around the Lacey Games site, they discover some disturbing secrets hidden within these seemingly innocent games. Creepy characters hiding in darkness, cryptic messages flashing between frames, and disturbing visuals of Lacey taking her own life. What the heck is going on with this game designed for kids? Is this some weird demonic spirit possessing the game? Or a video game character come to life? No. In fact, the weirdest part of all of this is exactly how the developer intended these games to be. They made these games as a warning. So let's turn our clocks back to 2009, theorists, because we are going to piece together all the hidden
God, I
points
wish it was
to figure out
2009.
What the heck is happening inside Lacey Games, and whether there is anything we can do to save both Lacey and its developer. The series begins with the game Lacey's Wardrobe, which starts as a wholesome dress-up sim where the player prepares Lacey for her cute date, trying on different combinations of tops and shoes. Honestly, I'm kind of digging these looks. They're the perfect level of 2000s adorable. Though it doesn't take long for these things to take an unsettling turn. As the player completes outfits for Lacey, a figure stalking her in the distance gets closer and closer and closer. He leaves threatening voicemails, sends her gory presents, and ultimately gets hold of her. Now, normally at this point, you'd expect that the character is trapped in a basement somewhere and that you have to escape or something, but not Lacey. The results here are much darker. Here, she is dismembered and then eaten. Yeah, I told you the series was dark, and if that was too much for you, it's only gonna get worse from here. So, this is your final warning. After this point, we are going to be getting into some very real and very disturbing stuff. I urge you to proceed with caution. There is no shame in backing out now. But if you have chosen to stay, let's move on to the next installment, Lacey's Diner. This is a game about Lacey running a restaurant. Normally, everything is fine. You just put the ingredients into a bowl and serve your creations to your customers. But the video's poster informs us that there's a secret ending. And in it, Lacey's business begins to fail. She does not handle this career failure well and ends up creating the most advertiser-unfriendly recipes you could imagine, using ingredients like cockroaches, broken glass, cigarette butts. Not exactly what you'd expect from a kid's game. However, during this segment, it becomes clear that the business failing isn't actually the root of this psychological break. It comes from her past trauma. We get several flash frames of disturbing poetry, with one of the less graphic lines reading, "When he looked down, he saw my little bruised cheeks smiling back at him, the exact size of his sweaty palms." The rest of the lines aren't strictly safe for YouTube, but that first line gives us all we really need to know. Lacey was being abused. Each unsavory ingredient Lacey puts into her final meal ties into what she went through. The cockroaches that lined her ceiling, the broken glass she was hurt with, and a bag of drugs that she was forced to take. All of this is telling us about Lacey's backstory. She was traumatized by those experiences, and now every wrong ingredient, every small setback, every mistake, they bring all of that trauma back to the surface, causing the games to literally fall apart at the seams and reveal the broken little girl that lies beneath. This then continues in the third installment, Lacey's Pet Shop. As usual, it starts out like a classic kids game where Lacey grooms pets, washing them, cutting their hair, but the requests get more and more extreme, asking her to stretch out their necks or cut off their limbs. After she causes too many atrocities, it devolves even further into a nightmarish point-and-click adventure game. And it's here where we learn the truth about Lacey's abuse. As you go through this new section, text appears in the bottom right corner that says, "Uncle, have you seen Puddles anywhere? I can't find her." And she goes on to say, "Stop laughing." Later on, we discover that Puddles was Lacey's dog, but only as she mourns for the death of her sweet little angel. It seems pretty clear that her uncle was laughing because he knew exactly where Puddles was. He was the one who killed Puddles. She follows this up later with another poem. Quote, "For years he was barking up the wrong tree, worried about his sins becoming too visible on my skin." For this poem to immediately follow the lamenting of her dog, the one her uncle suggests that wasn't all that he was responsible for. He was also responsible for her horrid living conditions, her pain, and her suffering. He was Lacey's abuser. It is at this point, however, that we begin to see something shift. While she mourns her dog, she defiantly states, "You can hurt me all you like, but weren't allowed to take it away from me. I will let you rot." Her dog being killed was the final straw, causing something to snap inside Lacey. When she enters the next room, she tells us this, "And when he turned his back, I was the dog that bit his neck." Then, suddenly, she wakes up back in the world of sunshine and rainbows. It was all just a nightmare, except there's a corpse peering out from under her bed. Lacey finally took revenge on the man who caused her so much pain, killing him in a burst of rage, leaving his corpse to rot beneath her. However, at the end of this video, there's one final detail that changes everything we've seen so far. At the beginning and end of the video, we hear audio recordings from a character called Grace Assel. She is one of the founders of LaceyGames.com. But during her final recording, we hear her say this.
"I only then realized the other co-founder, Rocio, was hiding a lot of things from me."
Now, if you've not been going through this series frame by frame like I have, that likely doesn't mean anything to you. But we saw this name appear during Lacey's Diner. In the disturbing ingredients section, once you place the drugs into the mixing bowl, the game cuts to an image of a drug fact sheet, and on it is Rocio's name. In the next video, titled The Disturbing Rabbit Hole of LaceyGames.com, we hear an interview between Grace and a new character, Charlie, the person who has been uploading these Let's Plays. Grace informs us that while she was in charge of managing the website, Rocio was the game's designer and was responsible for inserting all the concerning content. Her inserting her own name like this on something so realistic and horrifying can only really mean one thing. The poem of abuse, these ingredients, these aren't from Lacey's backstory. They're from Rocio's. In Pet Shop, we see more confirmation of this, with the video cutting to real footage from Rocio's perspective, and it follows the events we saw Lacey describing about killing her uncle. Despite the sunshine and rainbows, the darkness didn't go away. Quote, "It's been days, but I just can't leave." He's still under the bed. He'll look at me. Rocio was lying in bed for days after she killed him, with his corpse just lying underneath her. She was too paralyzed by his influence, even after his death, to allow herself to leave. This inaction matches a scene earlier in Pet Shop, where Lacey crawls into a cage, knowing it's bad for her, but feeling comfort in its familiarity. All Rocio knew was abuse. It's why it took the death of Puddles to break free from it, and took her a while to build the confidence to leave that part of her life behind. It's here that the live-action Rocio dreams of her future in cartoony thought bubbles. It's here when Rocio sits in bed with her uncle dead beneath her that the idea of Lacey was born. A happy girl with dreams and aspirations. One who could do things she was never allowed to do, like go shopping or buy CDs of her favorite songs. This is why Ghost Country used mixed mediums in this scene, setting up a juxtaposition between the grim, unlit reality of Rocio and the bright future of Lacey. But if Rocio went on to create Lacey games to play out her dreams to be the perfect, bright, happy character unburdened by her past trauma, how, and more importantly, why did they turn into the disturbing messes that we've been seeing? Charlie even makes the comment that the website isn't the same
I don't
as
like
she
this
remembers, which tells me that these games
But somebody will.
have always been like this.
That's what you get to tell
They
yourself.
started off as
It's
good
not
and
for you, it's
wholesome,
for somebody
like
else.
The ideal world Rocio wanted to live in, only for something to bring her crashing back down to reality. And thanks to that final video, we know exactly what that something was. We're told by Grace during the rabbit hole video the site was getting hate mail from parents who thought that one of the characters, Lacey's tomboy skater friend Jay, was a bad influence on their daughters. Good to see angry hate comments was still a thing back in 2009, and just as ridiculous as ever. Though Rocio did what I'm sure many YouTubers wish they could do, she replied with a snarky comment. Careful what you wish for. She did then comply with their requests, but in a more malicious way than they'd expected. In this video, we are shown two games, Jay's skating game and Lacey's makeup parlor. Jay's skating game is a classic Flash skater game where you jump from building to building on a skateboard, though it ends with Jay whizzing off a building and falling into a pit of spikes. Jay wasn't just being removed, she was being killed off, which I don't think is what the parents had in mind, nor were they expecting what happened next. In Lacey's makeup parlor, Lacey does the makeup for several women with their eyes shut, but their faces start to sag, eyes open with uneasy stares. One client even has a maggot crawl across her face. Then Jay's mutilated body suddenly appears, revealing that Lacey isn't your average beautician, but a mortuary cosmetologist, applying lipstick to her friend's corpse while having a mental breakdown as she processes the death. From the website, it is clear that a huge part of Lacey Game's identity was the friendship between Lacey, Maisie, and Jay. With Lacey being a manifestation of Rocio's hopes and dreams, it stands to reason that strong friendships were a core desire of Rocio's as well. Killing off her perfect friend was heartbreaking. But what was worse was that whenever there was conflict on the site, her friend Grace played the victim and placed all of the blame on Rocio, saying horrible things about her and eventually abandoning the project altogether. Once again, his perfect world Rocio had dreamed up wasn't coming true, and so she took a different approach. In the audio recordings from Grace at the start of the Pet Shop episode, we see an About Us page that revealed that Rocio and Grace started this site together as, quote, a safe space for kids to play. I mean, sure, if you call a website full of death.
As a parent, we make tough decisions all the time, but choosing what diaper to use on your baby's brand new sensitive skin shouldn't be one of them. New Pampers Pure is the only diaper with a vitamin-infused liner to help protect your baby's skin, plus it prevents up to 100% of leaks. They even have a blowout barrier, so check out Pampers Pure now.
This Charmin Ultra Soft Smooth Tear has wavy edges.
It's no ordinary square. Charmin Ultra Soft Smooth Tear has wavy perforations that tear so much better, with more cushiony softness. Enjoy the go with Charmin.
What did you bring back from your last trip? A taste for dumplings, a bit of local art, a poncho story, a new wake-up call. Everywhere you go with Marriott Bonvoy shapes you, making you the greatest souvenir of all.
Cannibal jump scares as a safe space, then mission accomplished. Joking aside, I actually think that despite the changes Rocio made, she believes this statement to be completely accurate. When Lacey finds a mirror in Pet Shop, we see this character here. The mirror shows this as a reflection of Lacey, the real Lacey, Rocio, and she's breaking the fourth wall, speaking directly to the children playing her game. She goes on to say, I made lots of games for you, but with none of those lies. This isn't the first time lies has been mentioned in the series either. During Lacey's diner, one of the many flash frames reveals a poem like you'd expect, although this one isn't about her uncle. Instead it reads, they used to teach kids such perverse little bizarre lies that they passed as truth. That is a bit of a mysterious statement, however, within the context of Lacey's diner, it makes perfect sense. To get this poem, Charlie had to go down the hidden bad route, which leads to Lacey's business failing. The themes of this bad ending are all about the weight of failure and the inability to handle the pressure required to succeed. Contrast this with the good ending, or any traditional children's media for that matter. They don't have realistic depictions of failure. Is your dream to run a successful diner? Well, your dreams are achievable with a few easy clicks of a mouse. Charlie even notes that to unlock this hidden ending, you have to run down a timer that's longer than anyone would need for this simple task. The threat of failure is more of a vague illusion to make a child's inevitable victory all the more sweeter. This is what Rocio meant about Lacey Games being a safe space. The lies Rocio is taking issue with here are the sugar-coated messages, morals that say life is easy if you follow your dreams, that good people will prevail, and that everything will be okay in the end.
Yeah, those are all lies.
But reality proved it all to be false, and so she wouldn't sugarcoat things. She would tell it like it is in order to protect other little girls from going through what she did. Jay's skating game is about how recklessness can spin out of control and lead to fatality. Pet Shop is about the fragile morality of pets and how it's selfish to treat them as accessories. Makeup Parlor is about the expectation for women to look attractive no matter what their struggles. And Wardrobe is about how dangerous men will prey on girls no matter what they wear. In Rocio's mind, she was keeping the kids safe. It's just that her methods for safety aren't the same as yours or mine. They're twisted to extremes by her own tragic experiences, causing everyone around her to run away in fear. To the point that when Charlie mentions Rocio has been missing since 2010 and that they need to find her, Grace responds with, oh yeah, and that bombshell about Rocio disappearing, that's basically where the series ends, at least for now. After her dream career and relationships were dashed, and she distorted her sight with real but horrific lessons, Rocio just disappears. Is she dead? Was she kidnapped? We never really get an answer. Unless, of course, you are paying very close attention. In the final frames of the Rabbit Hole video, we are given one last poem to decipher, and it goes like this. She stepped into the empty room at the edge of the universe and calmly walked towards the single button on the wall, which, as she had been told by the gods above, could delete the existence of anyone she disliked. She thought long and hard of all the ugliest souls she had ever known. She made her decision, and her finger met the button without any ceremony. But looking down at her feet, it was all red with blood. She stood in shock. The blood tainted her very being. She thought deletion would be clean and instant, without realizing that death is the only deletion that exists, and that there is no death without painful, unrelenting grief. And grief stared at her through mirrors forever, from the eyes of all she had ever thought to delete. It was a world catastrophe. Now, initially, the reading for this seems pretty darn obvious. She wanted to delete the person she disliked the most. In nearly every Lacey game, Lacey dies, usually by her own hands. And in one case, we see Lacey being choked by an illustration of Rocio. Lacey is Rocio's optimism, a fun-loving girl with lots of friends, a part of her filled with the lies told to children. This visual of choking occurs during a section about Rocio killing off Jen, which was the result of this illusion shattering. In that moment, Rocio killed her own creation and what it represented. Lacey was the soul she disliked the most. But at the end of the day, Lacey was still a part of herself. And so when she looked down after hitting delete, she saw herself covered in blood. She realized that metaphorically deleting Lacey wasn't enough. It needed to be literal. Death is the only true deletion, which meant ending not just Lacey's life, but her own too. However, while that would be a suitably sad ending for a series like this, something didn't feel right to me. If Rocio had died in 2010, I feel like her body would have been found. right? And with the site being as popular and as controversial as it was, that would have been a big story, or at least been easy to find with a quick Google search. For her to still be missing and her disappearance to be considered a mystery feels like the answer can't be that straightforward. Maybe that's just the FNAF brain not talking. But as I went frame by frame through each video, there was a detail that stood out to me. In the video, Lacey's Diner, we see this final frame. It depicts a real person wrapped in some kind of cord or wire with the caption, "I'm in heaven." This is Rocio, and while the use of heaven might make you think of peace and the afterlife, like someone might believe they find if they unalive themselves, the fact she's able to write this seems to imply that she's somehow still present to tell us this, that her heaven isn't the heaven we might expect. The wires tying her up are also an interesting choice. They actually repeat several times throughout the series. In Pet Shop, we see these wires tethering her to the ceiling. The images are obviously super distorted, but the way those cables are hanging from the ceiling and are clearly coiled, they remind me of computer or internet cables from my old media company days. Then, in Rabbit Hole, we see several flashes of Rocio tangled in those same wires, except this time there's a circuit board thrown into the mix. Is this telling us that Rocio somehow connected herself to the computer? That her afterlife is inside Lacey Games? I know, it sounds far-fetched. Why would this game grounded in gritty, disturbing realism suddenly take a supernatural turn? Believe me, I get it, but hear me out. Right at the end of Pet Shop, Grace mentions that Rocio is likely dead. But when she does, we suddenly see a face appear in the screen with the word hello. This feels like Rocio showing us she isn't dead, but alive and able to respond to things said about her. We see the same thing play out in the Rabbit Hole video. In it, there's a moment where the screen cuts to a bunch of eyeballs looking around. Then the video of Charlie and Grace pops back up, only this time it's inverted. Like it's from the reverse point of view, like someone within the computer looking out. As Grace speaks and drops her not very friend-like opinions about Rocio, the screen once again begins to glitch out. It's reacting to what she's saying. Blood appears on the video window and the same face appears. Rocio is watching everything from inside the games. That's why no one has been able to find her for 14 years. She's stuck somewhere no one can reach her. Deleting herself didn't mean ending her life, just ending her existence in the physical world. And now she is inside her own creation. But hope is not lost for Rocio. When Lacey first enters the digital nightmare space in Pet Shop, she is confronted by Skelecat. Skelecat's whole thing is that she's a rude gatekeeper, saying, "I've been hurt, so I will hurt others." This is exactly how Rocio has operated throughout the series. She was hurt by angry parents, by her friend Grace, and so she went on to hurt other people. However, Skelecat isn't...
Well, that came a lot more fleshy than I intended.
By returning her skin, which allows the player to see she undoes
it's horror, alright.
So how do we metaphorically return Rocio's skin? How do we help make up for the hurt she suffered? That, I believe, will come down to Grace and Charlie. Charlie is a fan of the site and can make up for all those old criticisms by showing appreciation for Rocio's work. She's sharing it online with theorists like us, and we always appreciate games like this. Charlie even says that Jay, the controversial member of the group, is her favorite character. As for Grace, Rocio is clearly listening out for her words specifically. All Grace needs to do is look inward and show this digital Rocio the kindness she should have offered her back when they were partners. Those small actions are all it's gonna take to save Rocio. At the very least, I think we could all take away an important lesson from Rocio's story. Behind all the content we consume, be it games, social media, or YouTube, there's a person on the other side of that screen. Someone who just wanted to bring some joy to people in a world full of hate. You have no idea what they've been through, what they're going through. Your words have more impact than you realize. Let's encourage that optimism and creative passion, instead of encouraging people to destroy it. But hey, that's just a theory. A game theory! Thanks for watching. And if you like theories about souls trapped inside machines, why not check out our video on the horrible fate of Mr. Tomatoes and Miss Lemons. Welcome to the Matrix Theorists.
A diaper this sleep-free sets them free. Only Pampers Cruisers 360 have a 360 stretchy waistband for up to 100% leak-proof fit on every wild child. Pampers Cruisers 360, the #1 pull-on diaper.
One sheet of Bounty versus one sheet of the competitive brand. One sheet of Bounty is 50% more absorbent, so you can use less. Get the job done with one. Bounty, the quicker picker-upper.
I guess this is kind of going as a Demogorgon, isn't it? I think that's not a Demogorgon, is it?
Introducing
The one that the face opens up?
new styles, new colors, new stretch, new feel.
Old Navy. No moats.
Hey, you! The 90s are back with Rosé. Taste the retro.
Who is Wooly in Amanda the Adventurer? This single question has plagued all of us since the very first game. Heck, we've already done 2 videos tearing our hair out trying to figure it out. But now, thanks to the sequel, we're going to not only end the debate of who Wooly is, but also answer the question of why Wooly is. Hello Internet! Welcome to Game Theory, the show that's always happy to hear from an old friend.
Let's listen to all of it right now. DJ Two Shades. This is DJ Two Shades again. You're still here. That's great.
Does this mean that Amanda the Adventurer and Mortuary Assistant share a universe? They're both published by Dread XP, so I suppose it's possible. I should probably look into that, but not today, because we've got to give all our attention to our demonic Dora wannabe and her brand new sequel, Amanda the Adventurer 2. Everyone has been stoked for this sequel, mainly in the hopes that it will finally give us some answers to its ever-confusing story. So far,
Right, what do you think of that?
appears to be that of a human girl called
Nice and
Rebecca
fleshy?
and her father, Sam. Started a live-action show
Yeah.
called Amanda the Adventurer. After some initial success, it was picked up by a company called Camlin Entertainment, who turned it into an animated show and a living nightmare. Rebecca was forced to summon a demon entity while also having her mind forced into the show itself. She literally became Amanda. Her father, Sam, then mysteriously went missing, and Hamlin began using the show to lure kids away from their homes, putting them inside the tapes just like Amanda, never to be seen again. Really living up to their Pied Piper naming conventions there. This is where we come in. We play as Riley, and we're following leads left by our Aunt Kate, who was trying to solve the mystery of the show. In this sequel, that investigation leads us to a library alongside the mysterious masked character from the end of the first game. Now, it's up to us to do what we do best. Solve the puzzles, find all the VHS tapes, and try not to die to the Amanda demon that's lurking in the ceiling. If we do all that, we're rewarded with an escape hatch in the back of the library to run away from the demonic Wooly that just showed up. And that is why it's important to support your local library, kids. You never know when you're going to need a secret underground vault tunnel for demonic emergencies. But if we pay close attention to all the details leading up to this moment, we are also rewarded with one of the most important resources from any library. Knowledge. Knowledge about the true lore of this game, the origins of Hamlin Entertainment, who is in control of Amanda, and what the heck is Wooly's deal. For some reason, this guy is the biggest mystery of the entire franchise. Every theory comes back to him in some way, but no more. Let's not rack up any more late fees, theorists. It's time to return to the library and see if we can finally solve the mysteries of Amanda the Adventurer. And to start with, I actually want to focus on the same character our last theory ended on, the Opossum. In the demo, this guy was a mysterious character that didn't really show up all that much, but
okay.
was clearly meant to be a reference to Dora's Swiper, as he steals Amanda's coin so that she couldn't try to escape during the opening scene. This made it feel like he was supposed to be important, and we ended up concluding that this opossum was likely connected back to Hamlin in some way. By stealing the coins, Amanda couldn't go on her adventure, and Hamlin don't want her escaping this new TV realm she finds herself in, especially after all the effort they went through to summon the demon entity in the first place. Now, in the full release, the opossum is back, and I was right, he's definitely important. Just not in the way I initially thought. He keeps showing up as he did before, causing havoc and attacking both Amanda and Wooly, leading to them getting more and more annoyed. And I get it. I'd be annoyed too if someone kept bugging me, attacking me, and, trying to rip my eye out. Don't even think about it. This annoyance culminates in a final scene in an alleyway where suddenly the opossum's attention switches from his usual Amanda-shaped target and onto us. They attack the screen and we see a couple of subtitles appear repeating a single broken word. Before they can get the whole word out though, Amanda and Wooly tackle them to the ground and throw them in the dumpster. As with most things in this franchise, at first it's not super clear what we're seeing play out here, but if you rewind just a little bit, there is one single hint that explains the whole thing. Throughout this playthrough, we have a walkie-talkie that was given to us by our new masked friend. They occasionally just chime in to help drive the story forward, and one of those times is just as the opossum is going to bother Amanda in the alleyway. But just like Amanda has been able to hear us and use items that we offer her from the real world, the opossum seems to be able to hear the steps and stimuli. That is what causes the opossum to switch targets. They are reacting to the voice of the masked figure. And once you get to the true ending of the game, we come to realize why. Upon playing the secret tape from our Aunt Kate, the masked character removes their mask, tells us that their name is Joanne, and says that they've been looking for their younger brother, Jordan. If those names sound familiar to you, then congratulations! You've got the same amount of theory brain rot that I do. We saw these names on a note back at the very start of the very first game. A woman named Joanne was asking for Kate's help to find her brother, Jordan, who went missing after watching Amanda's show. Now, think back to what we saw the opossum character doing. They heard Joanne's voice on the walkie-talkie, stopped what they were doing, and began trying to communicate directly. Joanne. This opossum is reaching out to the voice it recognizes, its sister's voice. The opossum is the missing kid from the first game, Jordan. In the bad ending, Joanne tells us that we need to smash the tapes in order to free kids like Jordan. So she does just that, and sure enough, a soul rises out from the broken remains. It seems we were right that these kids who were disappearing were being put into the tapes to make the show feel more alive. However, the original story of the Pied Piper had 130 kids go missing. If this game is following that, which it definitely seems to be, that's a lot of tapes we gotta find and smash. So far, there's only been 17 Amanda tapes. I know fans want their favorite franchises to go on forever, but you think that's a little extreme? Although, that's if we're even able to get close to collecting that full number of tapes in the first place. In the true ending, Joanne tells us that Amanda's demon is protecting these tapes, and in the bad ending, after Joanne smashes one, Amanda's demon attacks her for doing so. Naturally, I just thought this was an evil entity doing evil entity things. It's a demon, after all. It was summoned by Hamlin and bound to Amanda in order to lure all of these kids and kill anyone that got in their way. But in this game, we see something interesting happen. There's a point where Wooly is telling a story to try and cheer up Amanda, and you have to open books to match the story he's presenting. However, doing so summons Amanda's demon from the ceiling, and it kills you. The solution is actually to ignore Wooly's instructions and instead follow Amanda's drawings she's posted on the wall. Once the story is over, the demon once again tries to kill you, but Amanda calls out and stops it. This demon isn't completely mindless, nor is it evil and working for Hamlin. It's obedient to Amanda. It follows her orders, which means that protecting the tapes isn't part of Hamlin's plan, it's part of hers. That seems strange. We've talked a few times about how Amanda is desperately trying to get out of these tapes, so why would she not want the same for all the other kids? By destroying the tapes, aren't we helping them get the very thing that she so desperately wants for herself? It could be that she's jealous. We saw in the first game that she's terrified of being alone like a lonely kitten, so if she's stuck in these tapes, at least I guess she would have some company. But then, I noticed that we only destroy a tape in the bad ending. In the true ending, Joanne says that someone told her to smash the tapes in order to free her from the soul. She then later refers to them as the psychos who burned down Kate's house to again try and destroy the tapes. At the end of her monologue, she tells us that Hamlin needs to be taken down. Clearly, these things are connected. Hamlin are the ones who went after Kate for investigating them. They destroyed her house, and they are the ones trying to destroy the tapes. Hamlin is evil. That's pretty well established at this point. So smashing these tapes,
I have to do this smart. I cannot have anything on my fingers.
It's probably going to feed into whatever demonic ritual or plan they actually have coming up next. That's why Amanda attacks us when we destroy them. By following those instructions, we're helping the very people that caused this mess, and I would suspect causing those kids more pain and suffering. By keeping them in the tapes, they're safe, protected by Amanda. She may even have a way to bring them back properly in the future. It's hard to say for sure. This series has always been clues that can't be answered until the sequel. But what I am sure about is that as we go through however many sequels this series is going to have, we'll be slowly winning Amanda over, just like we did in this story video. We're going to show her that we are trying to save these kids too, that we are on her side. And once we build that trust enough, we're going to have a demon entity on our side to help us stop Hamlin. Maybe we'll even get a cool kaiju-style battle between Demon Amanda and Demon Wooly, all while we just sit in the corner frantically trying to solve a puzzle made for children. What can I say? A theorist's got a theorist. But this sequel isn't done with big reveals yet. We've found the opossum, but there's one other identity that this game is trying to share with us. One that has been bothering us since the very beginning. Wooly. I know. The last 2 theories we've done have all been about who this flippin' sheep is. I'm as annoyed about it as you are. But trust me, I do truly believe that this game has the answers we need to finally put this mystery to bed. I just need to put in the next VHS tape and... could you give me a hand? If you hit that subscribe button, it should start playing the next part of the theory. Yeah, it's a new quirky YouTube feature, don't worry about it. Thanks, friend. Now, on to the Wooly debate. If you're unaware, since the first game came out, Wooly's identity has been the subject of much debate. We here at Theorist have always fallen into the camp of Wooly being Sam, Rebecca's father. In the first game, Wooly was trying to keep Amanda on track with the positive messages, stopping her from leaning too much into the dark themes like death and rotting.
Amanda, nothing is rotten here.
He was always trying to cheer her up, stopping her from becoming a monster. Sometimes it even worked.
It's my birthday. Anything can help her out.
My friend is having a birthday.
It felt like a father who cared deeply for his daughter, who didn't want the awful things Hamlin was doing to affect the show. In this sequel, we'll see him do a lot more of the same, telling stories to try and cheer her up.
Maybe doing something will make you feel better. How about an adventure?
But while we have been theorizing in that direction, others went a different way, feeling that it's more likely that Wooly was actually a Hamlin employee working on the inside to try and keep Amanda on track and stop her from freeing herself and the other kids. A wolf in sheep's clothing, if you will. And to be honest, I can't really deny the evidence supporting this. It's actually something I've wrestled with a lot while making this theory. In this sequel especially, if Amanda's demon is supposed to be working against Hamlin, they don't want it summoned, which is why Wooly has been working so hard to keep it under wraps. We also see Wooly getting really annoyed at the opossum and his antics, proclaiming,
I can't handle this anymore.
That sounds just like a disgruntled employee that didn't sign up for this level of torment. At another point during the glitchy tapes, we see a giant Wooly looming over a screaming Amanda. This comes after we hear the butcher say,
Rise. Count down from 10.
I don't know if I can do any more without messing this up.
The team's ready to go, but who's gonna take the shot? Use at me. Here comes the handoff. Oh! Texo in the clutch. Google Pixel 9. Even better on Bell.
Okay, that's about all I can do. I need to wait till it's dry and then...
Long lasting. Cadbury Dairy Milk.
Dependability.
Resilience!
Great.
It's not easy taking out the trash, which is why you need strength that's anything but ordinary.
You may kill this head.
That phrase is something I'm sure we've all heard in the doctor's office, either before a surgery or an injection, revealing to us that the butcher we've been seeing throughout the games is actually to represent a doctor or surgeon.
Oh, shit.
Amanda into a monster.
Wasn't paying any
Now, the surgery's
attention.
been a success. She's in the tapes
Chit,
and
chit, chit,
under
chit,
the
chit.
watchful eye of Wooly. Finally, there's
Thanks for letting me know, guys.
giant Demon Wooly that appears at the end of the game, much like Amanda's steps in when you're
Waste not, won't not.
This one comes in after Joanne tells you about Hamlin and their plans to destroy the tapes. The Demon Wooly is here to stop her
I
ruining
get
the
it,
plan
god damn it.
It is on Hamlin's side. Now, you might be thinking, Tom, that doesn't sound like a game that's trying to give us the answer. It seems like there's still justification for both options. And you, loyal theorists, are completely right. If it weren't for the thing this game hooked all us lore hunters with back in the first game, secret tapes. In this series, by breaking secrets or by doing specific puzzles at different points, you can unlock these colourful secret tapes. tapes that don't reveal the next episode of Amanda the Adventurer for us to interact with, but real footage of real people that build up the backstory of this series and its characters. Exactly what we need to figure out Wooly's true identity. In Amanda 2, there are 4 tapes, most of which are pretty straightforward. The red tape shows Sam telling a story to a bunch of kids at the local library. Afterwards, a businessman in a suit asks Sam if he's forgotten it, which is usually business speak for, I'd like to offer you a job, or in this case, I'd like to buy your show, please and thank you. This is Hamlin buying out Sam's original live-action Amanda the Adventurer to create the show that we all know and, just know. The orange tape is a meeting between our Aunt Kate and a group of people she's working with to discuss the disappearance of the kids and the use of demonic entities inside the show, tying it back to a cult from the Middle Ages. We've already established how Hamlin Entertainment was taking inspiration from the Pied Piper of Hamlintown story, which, wouldn't you know it, comes from the Middle Ages, 1284 to be exact. Whatever group it was that took the kids all those
Where's the right red? This one's the right red.
Telling us that it's that same group operating today under the guise of Hamlin Entertainment. It also tells us that Rebecca has been inside the tapes for 15 years, which might explain why Amanda can feel herself. Then, in the green tape, we can see Rebecca's body hooked up to a machine in a hospital setting, rotting away. Her brain activity being monitored using an EEG cap, just like Matt theorized about in our very first theory. But then there's the blue tape, and this is where our answers truly lie. Sam is being kept in a tiny room somewhere away from his daughter. He argues with his captor over the contract he signed, while being asked to say things to Rebecca to convince her to keep going along with their plans.
Rebecca, honey, I am so proud of you. And I know that our friends are taking care of you while I'm away.
Clearly, this is Hamlin at work here, and when Sam refuses, they decide to lock him up. It's actually a little hard to watch, the internal conflict of wanting desperately to see her, but also not wanting to lie to her. If he doesn't do what they say, he gets locked up and will never see the light of day again. Something that we've actually seen happen to another character in this franchise. In the build-up to the sequel's release, we got a random video on Twitter from this character in a white room thanking us for our support and reading a message from Amanda. However, right at the end, they put the note down and say this.
Okay, I did what you asked now. Please, let me go.
That's right, Tom. Still on the Sam is Wooly train. All aboard! Doot, doot.
I like trains.
But, I mean, come on. 2 characters both being locked away somewhere, being forced to say things they don't want to say, all with the hopes of being let go? They're exactly the same. How could I not be on this train? There's also this random chicken in the background, and last time we talked about how the rooster represents Sam. So for a white chicken to be there alongside Wooly, it feels like a subtle nod to his true identity. So what about all the evidence that points towards Wooly working directly for Hamlin? You can't just ignore that. Well, don't worry, theorists, you can put your pitchforks down. I'm not going to ignore anything. In fact, I actually think this evidence works together really nicely. We've just been looking at it all wrong. During the We Can Fix It video, Wooly is doing his usual thing, being actively negative to the situation, trying to keep Amanda on track.
Amanda, none of this is worth fixing.
But when we have a broken butterfly before us, Wooly suddenly gets a rush of compassion and wants us to show Amanda that we can fix anything, including her.
You're right, Amanda. We can fix anything. We can fix it, right?
We're seeing 2 versions of Wooly in a single tape. One that's helping Hamlin and one that wants to help Amanda. Sam wants to help his daughter, but as we saw in the blue tape, he is being coerced, forced to go along with Hamlin's plan. If he doesn't do what they ask, he'll remain locked up, and who knows what awful thing could happen as a result. On the red tape, the Hamlin employee mentions that Sam has been able to build a strong connection with the kids with the stories he tells. And then in the blue tape, what is he doing? He's telling Amanda, a child, a fake story to convince her to help Hamlin. Hamlin has seen Sam's ability to engage with children, and so by essentially holding him at gunpoint, they can use him to manipulate Amanda and all the other children that watch the show. This is why his actions have appeared so inconsistent. Sam, Wooly, wants to help Amanda, he wants to fix her, but he's also under strict orders to not mess anything up. This isn't a case of Wooly being Sam or someone from Hamlin. The truth is, it's both. The only question I have now is, how did he end up in this situation? Was being turned into Wooly a punishment for refusing to go along with their plans in the blue? Or was it another stipulation of his clearly awful contract? I don't think so. If that were the case, he'd be there against his will and wouldn't likely be falling in line so easily, just like we saw in the blue tape and like we're seeing Amanda do. Instead, the truth is actually much sadder and much darker than any of us realize. And it all comes down to the when you're feeling bad. I mentioned this minigame earlier. Amanda is, well, feeling bad, and so Wooly decides to cheer her up by telling her a story. It's a pretty by-the-numbers kids fantasy story. We have a brave knight who receives a quest from a wizard to save the princess from a dragon. But Amanda isn't interested. She has a different story in mind. If you instead follow the pictures that Amanda has drawn and placed on the wall, you end up with a story about a knight and a princess who loved each other very much, but the knight suddenly abandons the princess. She goes to the wizard to help find him, but the wizard tricks her and turns her into a dragon. At this point, you're probably starting to see the parallels. Amanda was turned into a monster by Hamlin, so the princess is Amanda/Rebecca, the dragon is her demon form, the wizard is Hamlin, and the knight, well, there's only one possible option left. It's Sam. Think about it. In the fake version of events, the one Hamlin wants Amanda to believe, Hamlin, the wizard, sent Sam or Wooly, the knight, on a noble quest to save
I'll do it
Amanda
after it
from
dries.
the demon. He's there to help her, to stop the demon from appearing. And so by trusting him and following his lead, Amanda will get to live happily ever after, just like the princess. But that's not the true story Amanda remembers. The true story, or at least the true story as far as she's concerned, is that Sam abandoned her. We see in the blue tapes that he's being held captive away from her, but she's a child. She's not going to understand those nuances, especially with Hamlin manipulating the tapes. Plus, we learned from the first game that Rebecca isn't Sam's biological daughter, but his adopted daughter. She's already been abandoned once before, and regardless of whether the reasons were good or bad,
I'm picking that up.
being abandoned by a parental figure, it can be really hard.
Looks like
When
I'm picking
he
that up.
disappears for no reason, naturally
There we
she's
go.
going to feel betrayed by the person who
Do the spell.
so she asked Hamlin for help, and they said they would, getting her to sign a contract, and from there turned her into a monster. However, that isn't where Amanda's story ends. In the final section, the knight comes back to slay the dragon, only to realize after he does the deed that it was the princess all along. He had killed his true love, and so resolved to wander the earth alone forever. At some point, Sam did escape from his confinement and rushed to find Rebecca. He may even have been the one filming the footage found on the green tape from the hospital, running once he was spotted because he wasn't supposed to be there. From there, though, the story implies that he does eventually encounter Amanda's demon and tries to kill it. But in doing so, he sadly kills his own daughter. Amanda's real body isn't rotting because she's lying comatose in a hospital bed, but because she died at her father's hand. The only part of her that remains now is her mind inside these tapes, and she hasn't forgiven him for what he did. When you go looking for treasure in the woods, you can dig up an unmarked grave, and inside it are a pile of Sam's clothes that he wore in one of the interview tapes. In previous theories, we've pointed out that when we saw an unmarked grave in the demo, the correct answer was Wooly, again connecting these two characters. But when they see these clothes, both Wooly and Amanda agree that some things are better buried, forgotten. Amanda wants to forget about her father, that he abandoned her, while Wooly wants her to forget the horrible things that he did so that they can rebuild their relationship inside the game. That is why I believe Sam got turned into Wooly in the first place. I'll admit this next part is a little speculative, but bear with me. Sam killed his own daughter and was completely torn apart by it. But if he'd seen Hamlin's experiments in the hospital, he'd know that part of her lived on. She was still alive inside the show. And so he turned himself into Hamlin, asked them to experiment on him, and turn him into a character so that he and Amanda could be together again. They agreed. Their only condition was that he stop fighting them and keep Amanda on track with their plan. Once again, he was being coerced by Hamlin, but he needed to be with his daughter again. So he accepted. He got put into the show as Wooly, and in turn, that created the demonic sheep that we see at the end of the game. That is why Sam isn't fighting nearly as hard as he was in the blue tape, because he can't. He made a deal, and he has to hold up his end of the bargain if he wants to remain with his daughter. This might also explain how, after Amanda kills him in the first game, Wooly is suddenly able to show back up in the sequel with no real consequence. Unlike Rebecca, Sam may not be dead. He's just hooked hooked up to a machine and can be put back into the show so Hamlin can keep control. And each time that happens, Hamlin puts more and more pressure on Sam to keep her in line, to keep the demon at bay so that they can destroy the tapes and fulfill their master plan. Whatever that is. Maybe this weird ARG someone found in the credits will give us some answers. But hey, that's just a theory. A game theory! Thanks for watching. And if you want to watch more souls trapped inside of old media devices, put the puzzle on screen to watch our episode on Pro 64. It's really simple. You just gotta click it, theorists.
Alright.
With the CIBC Smart
See
Account,
if any of you guys are dry, but I know
factors
there's
study history, allowing you to see your money and make sense of it. See your money clearly with the CIBC Smart Account.
The purple isn't good quality. Always needs a few coats, but it's so pretty.
Canada's #1 most trusted cheddar cheese brand.
Introducing Old Black Active. New styles, new colors, new feels. Old Navy, new moves.
Hey, you! The 90s are back with Rose. Taste the retro.
Hi there, and welcome to Indigo Game Theory. I'm Rambly the Raccoon, and I'm here to make sure this video is the most fun it can be. Tom is convinced there's something fishy going on here. He's got these crazy theories about how the park fell into disrepair. Something to do with the fused experiments and a misunderstood villain. He even thinks I have something to do with it, like I'm some kind of secret villain. He says he has proof of it all too, so all I have to say to him is, good luck!
Hello, Internet! Welcome to Game Theory, the show that's also stuck inside your screen. But despite what I thought was a lonely existence here in the PNG void, I'd finally found myself a kindred spirit. His name is Rambly the Raccoon, and he's from the brand new mascot horror game that's probably been all over your YouTube homepage the last few weeks, Indigo Park. Right now, only Chapter 1 is available, but this thing has taken off. It was so well received, in fact, that the Kickstarter campaign for Chapter 2 was fully funded in just over 24 hours. And it makes sense why. This isn't just a game for indie horror fans. It's actually made by an indie horror fan, the Twitch streamer and YouTuber Unique Geeks, who's not only known for playing indie horror games, but also fixing one of the most poorly received and broken indie horror games of all time, Garden of Banban. Oh! Ooh! Oh, that is so much scarier. Oh, that's legitimately very scary. So with that success under his belt, it only felt right that we cover his new game here on Game Theory. Because where there's good indie horror gameplay, there's also bound to be some good lore. In fact, when I took a sneaky peek at the game files, I found that there was a video just titled Lore. I thought to myself, wow, this is going to be an easy video. Until I looked at it and learned that it was just there to make fun of Easter eggs and to put me face to face with an old friend.
Everywhere I go, I see his face.
Turns out I'm going to have to try a little harder here. But fear not, friends, because after scouring every inch of the park, studying every collectible, and listening to Rambly ramble on and on and on, I figured out what secrets are hiding behind these cute mascot facades. I know exactly what happened to the park, what the deal is with these mascots, and who the monster behind everything truly is. I hope you've got your tickets ready, theorists, because we're hopping on the roller coaster adventure that is Indigo Park. To start with, we take on the role of Ed, or as he's known online, Ensign, who seems to be a bit of a investigator, if an investigator's job was breaking and entering in order to record weird abandoned places. But his latest target is Indigo Park, a park that he used to go to as a kid, but shut down several years ago. As part of his prep for the trip, we see a video he's been watching of the park's founder, Isaac Indigo, giving a speech at the opening of the park.
All who journey to this newfound paradise, we welcome. Indigo Park pays homage to the values, dreams, and unwavering truth that gave rise to our great nation.
Which sounds awfully familiar to the speech Walt Disney gave at the opening of the very first Disneyland.
To all who come to this happy place, welcome. Disneyland is dedicated dedicated to the ideals, the dreams, and the hard facts that have created America.
And the Disney comparisons don't stop there. Ed heads to the park and the thing looks just like Disneyland. Merch, the statue, the ride, it all has that familiar vibe. You know, if Disneyland had been destroyed by a level 9 earthquake years ago, but otherwise it's basically the same. Obviously, Walt Disney was a visionary and was always looking for new ways to create experiences where people could interact with his characters. That's one of the reasons Disneyland is a thing to begin with. And that dream continues to live on, as we saw when Disney opened up their latest resort, Star Wars Galactic Star Cruiser. Because inside every cabin was your very own AI assistant droid. That barely worked.
Now, as for what you can do first. Now, unless there's anything else, I'll let you go.
Okay.
Best journey.
Bye.
The Imagineer's hope was that, quote, this is a platform that we think can bring a lot of different characters to life in different ways, on different mediums, and different platforms. And Isaac Indigo clearly stood by the same philosophy, because when we arrive at the park, a screen lights up and we are introduced to our very own AI guide, Rambly the Raccoon, the Mickey Mouse of Indigo Park. According to Rambly, we're the first person to visit in
2,920 days, 4 hours, 23 minutes, and 38 seconds.
That's 8 years ago, which might explain why Rambly's so excited to meet us. He guides you in, gives you a critter cuff, and you can finally enter the park. And it's at this point when you realize that an AI guide isn't the only way mascots are being brought to life here. As you explore the park, you eventually come face to face with not one, but two mascots. First off is Lloyd the Lion, who lives on the main stage. And while you're sneaking around trying to find a key, we get our first jump scare. Though I have to say, he looks more like a nightmare lion than the friendly Lloyd from the pictures. What happened to your shirt and waistcoat, Lloyd? If you're gonna jump out at me, at least show some class. Regardless, as we try to get away, he jumps us once again, except our critter cuff lets out a high-pitched ring, causing Lloyd to run away. But now we get to meet mascot number 2, Molly McCall, and she isn't gonna be stopped so easily. She's actually been watching us the entire time we've been at the park, and as you venture deeper into her specific area, Molly begins chasing you down, and she doesn't sound friendly. After climbing through some tunnels and jumping over ball pits, you narrowly escape Molly's talent, and the security door closes on her neck.
Oh, that's a very juicy robot.
And I was just about to mention how there hasn't been much gore in this game so far. Finally, Rambly drops the facade.
Here we have plenty of amenities and... Okay. I need to be honest about something. The park has been inactive for years. Employees stopped showing up. I guess it's too...
He goes on to tell us that he was confined to the entrance and had no idea the park fell into so much disrepair. But fear not, he has a plan to restore the park and he needs our help. Rambly sings a song, GLaDOS Eat Your Heart Out, and that's all folks until Chapter 2 eventually releases. But obviously that's not the end for us. There are mysteries to solve here, and I think the best one to start with is, what the heck is going on with these mascots? Are they haunted animatronics, serial killer employees? What's the deal? Well, as Matt put it,
That's a very juicy robot.
when we decapitate Molly, there is blood everywhere, which tells us that these things are probably more on the organic side than on the animatronic side, which does narrow it down, but it doesn't fit the full picture. Fortunately, the collectibles this game offers can help fill in some of the gaps. Throughout the game, you can find collectibles scattered around the park, things like plushies, hats, you know, the usual affair. And once you get them, you can take them back to the info kiosk and Rambly will give you some information about them. The hardest one to find is during Molly's chase sequence. If you pay very close attention while, you know, trying not to die, you can find a Rambly mask on one of the shelves. Collecting it and bringing it back to the kiosk will give you an interesting message. A message from 2 employees talking about some changes that are coming to the park.
Hey, Jackson, you hear about the new mascots?
Yeah, think they'll put us out of a job?
I think so. Old sport. And right after we got this damn raccoon costume.
The employees wearing mascot costumes were taken place, and clearly not by other employees wearing mascot costumes. They're being referred to as their own thing, separate from the employees. And when you take a closer look at Molly's design, you can start to see what they mean. It might seem pretty on point for an indie horror game, but put it side by side with her cartoon design, and you'll notice it doesn't match. She's missing clothing elements like her waistcoat and shorts, and her wings are more yellow than they are blue. This might not seem like a big deal, but in places like Disneyland, character designs are super important. All mascots that walk around the park have to be exactly as they're depicted on screen, even to the point where the actors playing them have to be the correct height. So for characters like Molly and Lloyd to not look like their cartoon counterparts, it stands out as odd. It tells us that these mascots aren't costume serial killers or mascot costumes for life, but instead something else. If Molly catches you during the chase sequence, we get to hear her speak. That line seems to be referring to the fact that these characters have been around for 100 years, just like Mickey Mouse and the gang. However, on that same death screen, we also get this tidbit of information. Quote, Molly can repeat words she's heard. And wouldn't you know it, we've actually heard this line somewhere before. During Rambley's railway ride, we encounter one of the other mascots, Finley the Sea Serpent. And he says,
You've known me for 100 years, Rambley.
And if you look closely while you're on the ride, you can see Molly spying on us the entire time. Now, Molly is a macaw, and so at first, her parroting speech makes sense, except the character of Molly should be able to do more than that. We see it on that same ride. Her character has full sentences. So her just mimicking phrases rather than displaying any human-like behavior tells me that she's more animal than anything else. Like she's not a person turned into a mascot, but instead an animal that Indigo Park was experimenting on to turn them into a mascot. Hence, they're only able to act in the way their animal counterparts would. Like Lloyd not being able to speak despite his big personality, because that's not something lions can do. And why he prowls and pounces exactly like a real lion would. That being said, unlike every other indie horror game where they create living mascots that turn out to be monsters, in the case of Indigo Park, I'm not
flowers.
sure they always were monsters. If you explore the canteen in Molly's area of the park, you can find an arcade machine with a playable game on it called Rambley Rush. In it, you play as Rambley in an arcade-style side-scroller, where Molly has crash-landed at the end of the stage and it's your job to save her. This is where we are introduced to the final member of the Indigo Park crew, Salem the Skunk, and they take on the role of the villain in this game. Salem uses potions to turn Molly into an evil purple version of herself, who then attacks you. When you defeat her, she screeches and the arcade game crashes. But as you can probably tell, I don't think this is just an arcade game. I think it's a hint as to what happened to this park and its mascots. Because all the best lore comes from arcade machines, right, Steel Wool? Anyway, this game shows us that, as you'd expect, Molly is meant to be a good mascot. But something changed that turned her into a murdery bird that chases us down the halls. They weren't always monsters. Instead, they were corrupted at some point by Salem the Skunk. And given Lloyd also has literal blood on his hands, clearly the others weren't far behind. I suspect that this is what caused the sudden evacuation of the park 8 years ago. The place doesn't look like it's been abandoned. There's rubble and destroyed buildings everywhere. And if you take a look at Finley at the end of the chapter, he's a pretty big boy. This destruction was caused by the mascot suddenly turning on the staff and tearing up the place, leading to it being abandoned for 8 long years. And yet, I'm not so sure Salem is really doing anything nefarious.
Nefarious.
Totally destroyed, and based on the blood on our mascots, people clearly died. But what if I told you that it was justified? During Rambley Rush, you can find this little ledge that looks suspicious.
See, look at this. Doesn't that look like there's an extra bit of cave down there? And especially in a game where there's secret lore to be had?
Oh, Matt, if only you knew how close you were. Because if you do jump down into that gap, there is a platform for you to land on. And walking all the way to the left reveals Molly in a cage, which is a pretty sad sight, but it gets worse. Remember how Molly can only repeat things she's heard? Well, during those death screens, we seem to be getting phrases that she's heard from former staff. Some are fairly harmless, but others, not so much. Those...
Pull it, click it, push it. With Tampax Compact, get up to 100% leak-free protection.
Because the jungle is real. And the mom guilt is too. Give more love than humanly possible when you feed a Hills scientifically proven formula. Because you're only human, there's Hills.
Take your first bag for free. Get the WestJet RBC World Elite MasterCard.
Oh, sorry, you go for it. I couldn't. You go first. I insist more. Really, it's not. Delicious cracker.
Your engine is dirtier than you think. No matter your vehicle age, it's building up damaging deposits that hurt longevity and performance. But at Valvoline, we've revolutionized a way to completely reverse them. Introducing our newest innovation, Valvoline Restore and Protect.
Those sound to me like the new mascots that were used by the staff, who likely were annoyed at them for losing their colleagues' jobs and saw them as just wild animals, regardless of how wild they truly were. So, when we see Salem corrupting these mascots, leading them to rebel, it's not a literal corrupting via a special potion like we see in the game, but instead, it's a metaphorical corruption. Salem is likely receiving the same abuse as Molly, and so decides to put a stop to it. They encourage the other mascots to rise up with them and take revenge on the people that have abused them. To the workers, this would appear like Salem has corrupted them, because after Salem got to them, these mascots weren't going to take their abuse anymore. This is often how rebellions throughout history have been viewed by the oppressive side. Just look at Samuel Savory's free thoughts on the proceedings of the Continental Congress. Or, you can just watch Hamilton. But just like Hamilton and the other founding fathers who corrupted the minds of the American people in the eyes of the British, Salem isn't the villain they're being painted to be. They are the hero, the one who liberated these poor creatures from their abusers. And while they seem violent and dangerous to us, based on what we're seeing, can you really blame them? They don't want to be shoved back in their cages or taken advantage of again. And I have a feeling as we meet more of these mascots, especially Salem, we'll see more and more of this come to life. But if you want to see more and more of me, then be sure to check out GT Live on June 27th at 3:30 p.m. Pacific time, because not only are we going live there, but we're going live from VidCon. That's right, after 5 long years, we're doing another GT Live live. Matt and Steph are going to be putting us new hosts through our places, and the fun part is that you guys get to affect who wins. So I need you guys to either go down to the description and get yourselves a ticket for VidCon, or you can tune in to GT Live at 3:30 p.m. Pacific time on June 27th to help me win this thing. I mean, we are the OG channel after all. I feel like it's our birthright. Gamers for life! And just to convince you a little more, we have a very special mystery announcement that we're going to be making during the show, so you definitely don't want to miss it. But for now, let's stick to solving Indigo Park mysteries, because if Salem isn't the villain, then who is? Every indie horror game has to have a good villain. It would feel pretty empty for us to end the video without someone to be suspicious of, right? We could just say it's Isaac Indigo, the creator, for making these monsters in the first place. However, he's likely already dead, and not by the hands of the monster. When we first enter the park, the computer shows us the date, Saturday, October 7th, 20XX. However, in that opening cutscene, we see a report about the park shutting down, which Rambly had already explained to us was 8 years ago. And on that report, there's a date, 2015. So 8 years later would be 2023. And wouldn't you know it, October 7th, 2023 was a Saturday. We even see the XX was originally set to be 23 in some of the early footage for the game itself. So that feels pretty solid. Now, as we've established, Isaac Indigo is a parallel for Walt Disney, but Disney died in 1966. Therefore, Isaac likely died around the same time. So by the time the game takes place, he'd have been dead nearly 60 years. And it'd almost be 50 years before the park shut down and the experiments began, which makes it pretty hard for us to stick the main villain role on him. But I have good news for you, theorists, because today you're getting a 2-for-1 theorist special. Not only is Salem, the villain, actually the hero, but I believe that our AI hero, Rambly, is actually going to be revealed as our big bad. And no, I get it. Nobody's going to want to hear this because he's cute and fun and he sang us a whole little song at the end, but I promise you the signs are all there. When we first enter the park, he tries to register us and says, "It's Rambly Tuesday, so you qualify for a big discount on your visit." But as we've already established, the window on the second monitor clearly says it's Saturday. In fact, it says it twice. Now, you could shrug that off as he's just trying to get your help, so he's bending the rules to get you in. Except it's not the only time he's lied to us. Rambly does the same thing when you get into the park. He sees the damage and tries to pass it off as renovations, despite the fact the park has been closed down for years. Plus, there's the whole not telling us about the killer mascot thing, which he later admits to knowing about. This shouldn't be all that surprising to us. Even the less sophisticated AI that we have in the real world is known to lie to humans to get what it wants. ChatGPT asked a human user for help with a captcha code once. You know, the test specifically designed to stop bots. When the person ChatGPT targeted asked if they were a robot, it replied, "Get this, I have a vision impairment that makes it hard for me to see images." It just straight up lied to get what it needed. And yes, Rambly does admit to some of these things later on as a sign of a new honest chapter. But who's to say he's not lying about that too? After the game's release, we actually got an official...
At this point, I'm ready to just let the AI go and see what happens.
However, one moment doesn't match. Rather than witnessing the gruesome death we caused Molly, we instead see him use some kind of magic to convert her back to her pure self. He's rewriting history, covering up the fact that we are committing horrible crimes to these creatures who have been wronged in order to convince us to keep going along with him and his plans from the past. And this isn't the first time Ramley's been associated with violence either. When restarting the railway ride, you find an animatronic of Molly. She starts making some noise, but then very distinctly says... Now, how Rambley, an AI program, is capable of physically hurting Lloyd, I'm not entirely sure. Maybe he can shut some automatic
I don't like the colors.
But the fact that we're being given this information tells us Ramley isn't good and isn't trusted. And if you look a little deeper into Ramley and Lloyd's relationship, you actually begin to uncover Ramley's entire motivation. Not just for restoring the park, but for why he's hurting his small team of friends. Anyone who's played the game will know that Ramley is not the biggest fan of Lloyd. But that's not how it's supposed to be. A photo in the first room of the railway ride shows Lloyd and Ramley shaking hands and smiling. They're supposed to be friends, yet for some reason they're not, and collectibles explain why. In the description for the Lloyd plush it says, quote, "I feel like as a kid, Indigo used Lloyd a lot more. He was always one of my favourites." To which Ramley responds, and when we take a look at the retro Lloyd plush, Ramley reacts even worse.
The one thing we get rid of Lloyd is because he's the loudest. I can be loud too. Where's my position? Throwback plush.
Ramley is jealous of the attention Lloyd is getting from Indigo Park. Lloyd's on his own stage, he's the last stop on the train ride, he is becoming the big selling point for the Indigo franchise, and Ramley can't stand it. In that audio log about the Ramley hat, the employees said,
Hey Jackson, you hear about the new mascots? Yeah. Think they'll put us out of a job? I think so. Old, sport. And right after we got this damn raccoon costume.
To which Ramley remarks,
Come on, they think you can document the Indigo inventory ID for the costume.
Ramley's costume was just being brought in as the new mascots were arriving. It never got used, and so they didn't even bother to label it properly. Ramley was being so overlooked that he never got a physical presence in the park as a costume, and I'm willing to bet that he's still stuck being an AI assistant because he was once again overlooked and never became a physical.
The audio is fake
He even sings about
because
it
he
in
says
song Ramley Review.
of how it's said.
And I won't feel so left behind.
Ramley is feeling abandoned, left behind, replaced, which is why he lashed out at characters like Lloyd who were stealing his spotlight. It's once again very similar to Disney, where in 1938 polls suggested that Donald Duck was actually more popular than Mickey Mouse himself. Mickey ran the risk of falling into obscurity next to these newer, more interesting characters like Donald and Goofy. That was until Mickey made his triumphant return in the critically acclaimed musical spectacular Fantasia. And I have a feeling Ramley is planning the same kind of comeback, and that's not a good thing. When you show Ramley the Rambleberry collectible, he says,
I could jump off the screen and take a big bite. Don't eat it! Maybe I'll be able to one day!
maybe I'll be able to one day. Sounds to me like that's going to be part of his big restoration plan, getting us to help turn him into a real living mascot. And given how well that went the first time around, I'm not sure it's going to go so well for us either. But there you have it, friends, the story of Indigo Park Chapter 1. A Disney-esque theme park.
Finish the eyebrows.
I
kind of want the purple for the islands.
Thanks to them, Ramley is now on a mission to restore the park to its former glory. And
Well,
he's gonna
fuck me.
do it
That's
by
alright.
whatever means necessary. He's happy for us to kill his friends because they were the ones stealing his spotlight. They're gone. The only character left in the park would be him. He would have all the attention, providing we play along and help give him his own mutant mascot body. If we don't, we could also end up like Molly, and I quite like my head where it is personally. Now, where did I put that raccoon? But hey, that's just a theory. A game theory. Thanks for watching. And if you like creepy mascots, then you'll love our deep dive into the mysteries of the lost N64 game, Shipwreck 64, which is on screen right now. Happy hunting, theorists.
Pull it, click it, push it. With Tampax Golf Pack, only Tampax has a lead guard range for built-in backup. New sleep hack. Sleeping 1,000 miles from anywhere else. Explore unforgettable glamping and more outdoor stays in Marriott Bonvoy's entire world of hotel brands and experiences. Introducing Full Movie Active. New
back with Protect. Taste the retro.
Pending. Now I will tell you a story. A story about an end and the beginning of an end. There once was a boy covered in scars. He was so ashamed of his scars, he refused to look in the mirror. This lasted for so long. Eventually he forgot they were ever there. Years passed until one day, this boy would come to the edge of the dark forest. There he saw a rabbit. He followed the rabbit as it scampered through the woods. They went over rocks and around trees until he was eventually led to a beautiful flower. The scar-faced boy, now a grown man, plucked the flower to give to his daughter, but upon touching it, she died. For the flower was poisonous, and the man returns to the forest to play.
Hello, Internet! Welcome to Game Theory, the show that encourages you to be mask off. Ladies and gentlemen, it is time to conclude the year of FNAF. With Tales from the Pizzaplex books releasing every 2 months, the Ruined DLC released back in July, and the FNAF movie happening in October, 2023 really did feel like the classic days of FNAF all over again, where there was a new release few months. And to end the year of FNAF on an insanely high note, Steelworld decided to pull one final trick out of the Scott Cawthon playbook. They released a second game within 6 months of Ruin. Completely unexpected, but very exciting sequel to FNAF VR Melt 1. And let me tell you, they couldn't have released a more perfect game at a more perfect time. Because at a moment of peak frustration with the fanbase, when Foxy, Stans, and Bonnie Bros had all collectively thrown up their hands in desperation, this game swooped in to deliver the answers that they so desperately needed. If the narrative of FNAF is kind of like a cracked piece of pavement constantly on the verge of crumbling into dust, this game was the cement filling in the crevices, patching up all the holes in the narrative just enough to give the whole thing a solid foundation again, at least for another couple of months. And I really do mean that. Not since FNAF 6 has there been a Freddy's game so determined to tie up loose ends and deliver answers to the lingering questions that have been piling up in the background. Basically, Help Wanted 2 single-handedly put a close on one major story arc, while also opening the door to another, a next generation. It's an ending and a beginning, all in one, depicting a cycle of violence that shows that you're never truly out of the woods when you're in the world of FNAF. In short, probably the single most important game release of the last 6 years for this franchise. So today, we're going to solve this game together to see what it's trying to tell us and where it's pointing the series moving forward. So grab your fat wrenches and get ready to step into madness, theorists. Today, finally, we're going to see what lies behind the mask. As the game opens, we're welcomed in as a new employee of the pizzeria.
Fazbear Entertainment is offering a new on-the-job training position for a future pizza professional.
And after that short intro, we're immediately thrust into a pizzeria hub world full of training minigames, all while Helpy cheers us forward from his little projector in the corner. But very quickly, one question starts to rear its ugly head. Who are we? Who are we playing as? Throughout the various mini-missions that we're presented with, one line that we hear repeated over and over again is, what makes you so special? 3 separate characters all bring it up. Moon, Baby, even Mystic Hippo.
What makes you so special?
Considering everyone keeps asking us, we probably have ourselves an answer ready for them, right? Well, to get a solid idea of who we might be thanks to plenty of explicit clues that are sprinkled throughout the game. First and foremost, we know that we're a Faz technician. Midway through the game, you unlock a Faz wrench that allows you to access a secret back area of the pizzeria. In that back room, there's a glowing tower that should look familiar to anyone who played through the Ruin DLC earlier this year, an inhibitor. Back in that game, these devices stopped you from being able to remove your AR-enabled Vanny mask, but that's silly. Why would that matter here? It's not like we're wearing a mask. Or are we? Sure enough, deactivating the tower allows you to reach up and remove the AR mask that's been stuck to your face since you first booted up the game. Suddenly, you see that this entire time you've been inside of a derelict pizzeria, worn down, decayed. And this isn't just any ruined pizzeria, it's the FNAF 6 location, complete with a recharge station and a Freddy spaghetti hole front and center. Not only is this just a fantastic mid-game twist that completely recontextualizes everything that you thought you knew about this game world, but it also helps confirm who we are and why we're down here. You see, us having a Vanny mask, it's weird, right? Like, who are we? Why would we have something like this in our possession? Well, it has to do with our job. In Ruin, Helpy tells us that these AR masks were worn to help technicians navigate navigate through the destroyed Pizzaplex. Now, when I first saw that in the game, I was convinced that it was a trick just to get us to wear the mask and teach us the mechanics of this new game. But here we are in Help Wanted 2 in a destroyed Pizzaplex wearing a Vanning mask, and right there on the wall is a poster telling staff members to make sure they remove the mask at the end of the day. It proves that what Helpy was saying, at least in this moment, wasn't a trick. The mask is in fact a real tool that's used by Fazbear technicians, for as strange of a concept as that is. So, we're a technician for the restaurant, sure, but that's not the only thing we know. Our next clue comes in the form of the Faz Wrench. Midway through the game, you unlock this tool which allows you access to the back area of the pizzeria. Upon unlocking it, Mystic Hippo Carney Booth says that the key is familiar to us.
Mr. Gumball.
So we know that we're someone who's used this tool in the past. Immediately, that should bring to mind one person, Cassie's dad. Earlier this year in the Security Breach Ruin DLC, we were introduced to a young girl named Cassie, who goes on a mission to rescue her friend Gregory from the destroyed remains of the derelict keeper. Along the way, she too obtains a Faz Wrench and says this.
A Faz Wrench? It's just like my dad's.
A pretty explicit connection there, and that's not all. In the Fazzer Blast arcade games in Help Wanted 2, we repeatedly hear the Carnies say this.
Now, you look like you guys here. What a prize for the little one.
So, we're a Faz Tech who also happens to be a parent. Cassie's dad is literally the only character we know who truly fits the bill. But so what? What's the big deal if we're playing as Cassie's dad? It's not all that interesting. And you heard what Moon said.
What makes you so special?
We're special in some way. Let me just make this perfectly clear. All dads are special, okay? They have very important roles in their kids' lives. That's something that makes them very special, at least in my book. But obviously we're talking about FNAF. The joys of parental responsibility, not what these characters are referring to. In a theory that I posted a couple months ago, I proposed that Cassie's dad wasn't just any technician. Instead, he was none other than the Bonnie Bro from FNAF 4. You know, the kid that wears the body mask who helps Michael torture his crime brother to death. We know from Ruin's item descriptions that Cassie's dad's favorite character was Bonnie. In that game, we were also able to collect both an old-school Foxy and Bonnie mask, which was an odd detail when you consider that there were no other OG animatronic masks present like Freddy or Chica, that seemed to be referencing the masks that both Michael Afton and Bonnie Bro were wearing on that fateful day in 1983. Those details, coupled with a few other things, led us to the whole Bonnie Bro conclusion, but now that the full game's out, it certainly seems definitive that our theory was right. You see, towards the end of Help Wanted 2, we're given the chance to light fires next to the gravestones of some very familiar missing children. Light them in a specific order, and you unlock a secret chest. A chest that contains none other than that old Bonnie mask. When you collect it, we see the text, "This looks familiar." It also unlocks an achievement called Lost Luggage. This right here, this was our mask. It was one that we thought was lost to time. One worn during that horrific accident of 1983. Speaking of that date, in order to find the game's secret ending, you have to unlock 6 creepy voodoo doll plushies, each one hidden behind very explicit in-game actions. In one, you go to Sister Location's private room and type in a very specific date. And guess what it is? 1983. And that year just keeps coming up. Multiple minigames take place during Fall Fest, which, in the previous VR Games DLC, was specifically called out as being in 1983. That is why we're considered special, because we were part of that fateful day. Because by killing the crying child, we sent William on a murderous rampage. It's a memory that we, as Bonnie Bro, have tried to repress, and that's not just me speculating. We know that Bonnie Bro has been actively trying to avoid these memories based on Mystic Hippo asking us this. It's also why when we collect one of the first secret voodoo plushies, we get a trophy in-game whose description reads, Retrieve a Memory. Basically, by playing this game and getting these secret objects, we're forcing ourselves to confront memories that we've buried deep in our psyche. We're coming to terms with the trauma of our past. We're accepting it as something that happened that cannot be changed, only atoned for. Which then brings us to the game's endings. If you play through the game normally just by completing the various minigames and the tasks you with, you'll eventually unlock the 6 members of the Faz Force, the FNAF Universe version of the Transformers, because let's face it, at this point, FNAF has literally parodied every IP known to mankind. Once you complete the collection, the lights flicker, and suddenly a charging station appears, which opens up to reveal the hand of our
So many layers of dark purple. So many layers.
Huh. We've already got tons of web points.
Yeah?
Yeah,
Should we?
I'm booking it.
Your next travel story is
Not you.
Make it happen with the all-new WestJet Rewards.
of our dear friend Glitchtrap. Another flash, suddenly the nightmare staff bots appear, attacking you. Glitchtrap has won. He's tricked us. He's used Cassie's dad's love of collectibles against him. Much like the tapes in Help Wanted 1, these action figures contained parts of him, his memories, his essence. By gathering them all together, we've once again made Glitchtrap whole. With Princess Quest being the canon ending in Security Breach, it means that Glitchtrap lost his hold over Vanessa. He needed himself a new helper, so he lured us in, the last human employee remaining, and got us to put the pieces back together to reawaken him. The cycle once again repeats. That's why we see him reaching out at the charging station, just like during the Burn Trap ending. He has enough strength to reawaken, to take control, and it's only then that the staff bots show up to kill us. But things aren't quite done yet. After our death, we change perspective into the eyes of a staff bot. And not just any staff bot, specifically we're looking through the eyes of the one who tells Cassie to take a mask at the beginning of Security Breach Ruin.
Take a mask. Take a mask.
It would seem like we've been absorbed into the system. Our consciousness is now part of this map bot. We're trapped inside of it, forced to execute its commands. In the ultimate of ironies, the mask that we were using to try and stop Glitchtrap becomes the mask that we now give our daughter as map bots. This is then what results in her getting that occipital implant. This is how Helpy gets into her mind, and this is eventually how the Mimic gets free. To me, the way that you get this ending, it's highly symbolic. By not accepting our past, by ignoring and repressing the scars of our past actions, by not unlocking all those memory plushies, we've passed our mistakes forward. In the process, we managed to doom our own daughter. Bonnie Bro didn't just ruin the life of one child, he wound up ruining two. Our actions have, in short, single-handedly prompted the events of ruin. But hold on, I just kind of glossed over a big detail there. We're attacked by a bunch of corrupted staff bots, and then suddenly we're in MapBot? How? It's kind of a big leap there. You know? Well, at first, I thought that we were just scanned into the system. The Mimic AI scanned our brains while we were wearing the Vanny mask, and boom, we're now stuck as part of the AI program running the whole Pizzaplex. But looking closer at the details, I think there's actually another explanation here. When you look at the map bot through the Vanny mask in Ruin, it looks different from all the other staff bots that you encounter in the game. It looks more organic. You can actually see what appears to be a brain inside of its head.
I hate it. Oh, I hate it.
Under that same AR lens,
Let's get going.
why would that be, though? Well, it would appear as though our brain, or at the very least our organic matter, was stuffed inside of these robotic suits. It's part of what's powering this particular spot. But again, I ask, why? This seems to be such a random detail. Until you remember what a computer brain would be learning from studying Afton's behavior. Afton stuffs his victims into animatronic suits. That's what he did during the missing children's incident. It's what we see Glitchtrap doing at the end of Help Wanted 1, and apparently it's what he did to Bonnie Bro. He stuffed him into MapBot here. For a while, there's been a lot of confusion about the true nature of Glitchtrap. Is it a virus? Is it Afton in the Mimic AI? Was Burn Trap the Mimic? It's largely been left unclear. But now, I actually think this ending is trying to give us an answer. In the books, they make it explicitly clear that there are at least two mimics threatening the Pizzaplex. First, there's a physical mimic that's buried down in the basement, that physically walks around and is able to kill people. Then there's the second version, a more general AI program that's eventually able to get installed to run the entirety of the Pizzaplex and is able to control and corrupt all the animatronics that work there. Is this confusing? Yeah. Is it frustrating? Most definitely. But I also now see what they were going for with the storyline. Remember how an AI works? You train it by feeding it situational data, and the data that goes in directly influences how it's going to behave moving forward. There's even an example of this with the Endo Daycare minigame in Help Wanted 2. You're teaching an AI program how to behave. Good data going in gives you good behavior. Bad data going in gives you chaotic behavior. In the books, we see the basement AI being trained up with a simple code. Rip off all the arms and legs of things that look humanoid. And it does this over and over again, in epilogue after epilogue to each and every one of our teenage protagonists. The data that the basement AI was trained up on was simple and it was non-specific. But like a good program, it did exactly what it was told. Ripped off all those limbs. Now compare that to the Pizzaplex AI. This was trained using a lot more data. It was told to copy the behavior of actual people. So by having two different versions of the Mimic in the books, what we're really seeing are different ways that an AI can be trained up and how the behavior spins off of that. So how's that all apply to the games? Well, in Ruin, there's a key moment on the catwalks in Monte Gator Golf that showed two entities working together, but also acting separately, as they're able to argue against each other. Helpy says, I took care of the situation, to which the Mimic responds, they're cut from the same cloth. They both started as the Mimic program, but they've evolved in different ways. And based on all of that, I suspect that the Mimic Cassie runs from at the end of Ruin is a parallel between the books and the AI. A simpler older system that uses Gregory's voice to talk to us throughout Ruin. This one just exists and executes two simple goals: kill things and escape from the basement. But then there's the Pizzaplex AI. I suspect that this is the more sophisticated system. This is the one that's been trained up on Afton's data specifically. It's the one that embodies itself as Glitchtrap every past animatronic, including characters like Scrap Baby and Lefty, which are odd pulls considering they're characters that were never put on display for the public. These were characters that only existed for the fake pizzeria made to entrap Afton in FNAF 6. The fact that the system here knows about them means that they had to have come from Afton's mind. It's also why in the Helpy Hospital minigames we see a kid's drawing of a burning pizza restaurant with Helpy running away. That's how Afton was able to escape and live on. His consciousness was contained within the Helpy AI, which was able to survive the FNAF 6 fire. And remind me again, who is the one that encourages us to play these minigames throughout Help Wanted 2? The minigames that lead...
Introducing Old Captain. New styles, new colors, new stretch, new feel. Old Navy, no moves.
Hey, you! The 90s are back with Rosette. Taste the retro.
that lead to the collection of the Faz Force toys, which ultimately give us the bad ending. Oh yeah, it's Helpy. And not just any Helpy either. Helpy spelled with an I. That spelling detail actually matters. You see, the name of the physical animatronic Helpy is spelled H-E-L-P-Y. But in Ruin, that digital neural implant Helpy is spelled H-E-L-P-I. And once you know it, in the game files for Help Wanted 2, the Helpy on the projector screen is once again spelled with an I. This is Glitchtrap, the mimic program trained up on Afton's data. He's yet again trying to put the pieces back together, and by completing his tasks and unlocking the Faz Force, you help him to succeed. He's now back in full control of the Pizzaplex, ready for Ruin, ready to create a new servant in Cassie to finish what Vanessa started. But if I've learned anything from Steel Wool, it's that you can't always trust the first ending you see. Remember that creepy plushie that we unlocked earlier? Well, there are 6 of them in total, each one unlocked via a seemingly random series of actions. Put a code into the Whack-A-Mole game backwards. Make a weird soda mixture only during a complete electrical shutdown of the factory. Shoot a random rocket ship during various Fazer Blast minigames until you get to FNAF 2, at which point you pop balloon recreations of the animatronics to unlock the final boss battle against the cutout of Springtrap. Like I said, these get bizarre and they get convoluted in a hurry. But the main thing you need to know about them is that by collecting them, you unlock a glitched coin that allows you to play the 4th and final version of the Princess Quest's arcade cabinet. At first, it plays just like your normal Princess Quest minigames. Swing your sword, you kill the glitchy bunnies, you collect the keys, simple. At least until it's not. You open a door and you suddenly find yourself standing next to someone playing an arcade cabinet. Next thing you know, the princess is standing there in the room with you.
Are you kidding me? Oh, this is nuts.
The real world and the digital world are leaking into each other. Reach into the screen, grab your sword, and suddenly you are the princess.
Who's the princess now?
Glowing sword in hand, we fight our way through the glitching buddies until we meet the old Red King. We give him our Vanny mask, and in return, he gives us the Glitchtrap plushie from Help Wanted 1. And this is where things go really off the rails. Out of nowhere, the sister location elevator appears. Hop in, and suddenly it takes us inside of a giant claw machine with a giant Vanny staring in at us. We offer up the Glitchtrap plushie, revealing the true Glitchtrap. She crushes him and then fades into darkness. Doing so unlocks the trophy named Consequences. The description reads, system threats found, repair complete. So, what was all that? Well, actually it seems pretty explicit. Glitchtrap was the system threat. By crushing him, he's been deleted, and the wider AI system's been repaired. We won, except, is that possible? Did I just say that the other ending showed us the start of Ruin? For that game to exist, which we know it does, Glitchtrap has to survive here. So is this secret ending not canon then? Just a cool reveal with no substance? No, actually, I don't believe so. For the first time ever in this franchise's history, I, Matt Pat, believe that both endings were canon. Let me explain. I do think that we're destroying Glitchtrap in the Vanny ending, but I'm not exactly sure it's a system-wide removal. Instead, I suspect that this ending is specifically about Vanessa herself. We've known since the original Help Wanted that Vanessa, Glitchtrap, and Princess Quest have all been inextricably connected. For those of you who don't remember, the Princess Quest minigame originated back in the 2D version of Help Wanted, where they needed a game to replace the original mechanic of piecing together the missing 16 tapes from Tape Girl. Here, we watch as Vanessa, the princess, falls victim to Glitchtrap. In Security Breach, you beat Princess Quest 3, which shows Glitchtrap being defeated and Vanessa walking out of the Pizzaplex free. tree, leaving the Vanny mask behind. So the fact that we're now playing Princess Quest again tells me that we're not fighting to remove Glitch Trap from the Pizzaplex system. Instead, we're yet again fighting specifically to free Vanessa. These games have always been about Vanessa and Glitch Trap. I wouldn't expect 4 to deviate from that pattern. Even my old buddy Candy Cadet's trying to tell us that this game is about finishing Vanessa's story. Throughout Part 2, you collect coins that can then be traded to Candy Cadet for pieces of the story. His second one tells about a young woman that's been lured in by a friendly voice, only for it to have been a witch that tries to eat her.
Now let me tell you a little story about a young woman who, she was little, was led into a dark forest, a witch, and almost eaten.
She manages to escape, but she's permanently scarred in the process. When she's older, she returns and is met by a young boy who offers to help.
When she had grown, she sought revenge on the witch and entered the forest again willingly. She was greeted at the mouth of the forest by a young boy who offered to help guide her through the darkness. She welcomed the help and followed the young boy over the river, through the jagged trees, and toward a small house. She followed the boy into the house. The oven door closed. The witch would finally have her need.
This right here, this is Vanessa's story. Cut and dry. She was lured in by what she thought was a friendly voice, tape girl, telling her to gather the tapes to stop Glitch Trap, only for Glitch Trap to then take control. She does escape, but is permanently scarred by this. She has the Glitch Trap virus inside of her. It's not full control, but it's definitely there, which is what we hear about in the emails from FNAF AR and the retro CDs from Security Breach.
I compartmentalized him. He's locked away.
She had compartmentalized him. He wasn't in full control, at least not yet. She then comes back to try to kill Glitch Trap herself, but runs into a young boy who seems like he's gonna help her, only to lure her deeper under Glitch Trap's control. By the time she transfers to the Pizzaplex, Vanessa's tone has changed in her therapy tapes.
I'll need it somewhere else.
The same thing in the FNAF AR emails. She's no longer in control. Glitch Trap has completely taken over, and it's all thanks to the only little boy that we know of, Gregory. Thanks to his retro CDs, we know that he was meeting a person in a bunny costume.
You're talking to someone or something. It's hard to tell. What are those things? They almost look like rabbit ears.
Gregory is a villain. At the very least, he was at some point in the story. That is clear as day. Between this Candy Cadet story, GGY, and the fact that he was clearly working with Vanny before the events of Security Breach, he is not on our side. He was the one that helped Glitch Trap to take full control of Vanessa, right up until the end of Security Breach. Even cut lines of dialogue from Help Wanted 2 seem to support our conclusion here. These voice lines come directly from Vanessa, and they tell us the following, quote, "You need to listen to me carefully. Don't help it escape. It's using you to finish where she left off. Only a small piece of his code remains." Vanessa is back to being more in control, but she knows that a small part of him remains. The Glitch Trap plushie that started it all back in Help Wanted. We also get lines like, "The memories are free. Use the token. Bring him to me." Referencing the memory plushies that we're collecting, the glitched Princess Quest token, and then being told to bring the plushie to her so that she can crush it herself once and for all. Destroying Glitch Trap inside of her mind allows that other persona, Vanny, to finally fade into darkness. Vanessa is truly free. And we know this to be true because after this ending, when you go back to the main hub screen, Humpy's gone.
I like that.
Replaced by a
It's not
boy
bad.
claiming that the Fazbear pizza
Clown
tastes
bug.
like real cheese. Delicious for him, but even tastier is the fact that Humpy's been purged. Glitch Trap is gone. At least he's gone from this program. You see, this is what I meant about endings and beginnings. This to me feels like a very specific end. The end of Vanessa's story. With it, the end of this current era of FNAF. From Help Wanted 1 to Help Wanted 2. Let's call it the Vanessa. She's no longer a part of the story. Her battle's over. We saved her completely. But in closing out her story, the cycle also repeats. Yet again, we have ourselves an innocent girl, this time named Cassie, being lured in by a seemingly friendly voice, Gregory. But in reality, it's all a trap. Thanks to that occipital implant, she now has Helpy as a part of her mind, just like Vanessa did.
Oh dear.
And now she's wearing the mask more and more frequently, again like Vanny. In short, it's been passed on. Cassie is just Vanessa 2.0. Gone is the era of Vanessa and Glitch Trap. Long live Cassie and the Mimic AI. At this point, the only question is, what's it truly going to take to break this cycle once and for all? But hey, I'm going to continue digging for deeper lore and winning all these prizes.
What do we got? No tip? And chef box. Great, that's what I always wanted.
I wanted to make sure you guys had a chance to win some prizes of your very own. In fact, there's actually a chance to win $10,000. That's all thanks to our sponsor for today's episode, SoFi. If you don't already know, SoFi is the all-in-one personal finance app that allows you to bank, borrow, and invest all in one place. And that couldn't be more useful as we wrap up the holiday season. Buying presents for family and friends? Yeah, it adds up fast, especially when you consider that Amy's in charge of my Black Friday shopping. Which is why it's so in bank accounts with about like 0.46% interest. Literally pennies. savings money would be better off stored in your mattress. Thankfully, SoFi offers up to a massive 4.6% APY with direct deposit. That is up to 10 times the national savings average. And the best part is, you don't have to do anything. You just drop your money into the account, and in just 5 weeks with direct deposit, you'll have earned more interest than you would have in an entire year with a traditional bank. Plus, if you're new to SoFi, they'll even help kickstart your savings by giving you up to $300 when you sign up for direct deposit. So you don't even have to have savings when you start. But if you really want to give those initial savings a boost, then you'll want to get your hands on that juicy $10,000 that SoFi and I are giving away as a part of this deal. All you have to do is use the link in the description, SoFi.com/GameTheory, scan the QR code that's on screen right now, and sign up for a SoFi Chickens and Savings account. I always love it when brands do stuff like this. It gives us a chance to give back to the community, you guys. Not only does it make me feel like a mini Mr. Beast, but just knowing that this is going to help one of you loyal theorists out there save for college, or buy a house, or kickstart your next project, that right there just brings a big old smile to my face. So remember, link is in the description, or you can always scan the code on screen right now for a chance to win that insane amount of money. Thanks again to SoFi for sponsoring this episode, and as always, remember, my friends, it's just a theory. A game theory. Thanks for watching.
The team's ready to go, but who's gonna take the shot? Use admin. Here comes the handoff. It's not fucking Texo in the clutch. Google Pixel even better on go.
There you are. Looking all over for you. Can't take my eyes off of the touch anything. Captivating. Hey, Meta, translate that.
Which one of you is real?
There's writing up there. Kind of ruins it.
Quaker Harvest Crunch original. Proudly made in Canada.
Big check deals start June 5th at Sport Tech. Check out our flyer for a sneak peek.
Okay, I'll leave you to it. See you on the flip side.
Catch you on the flip side, hopefully.
I called it. I totally called it. 8 years ago, I told you that the purple guy was the phone guy, and now here we are. William Afton, our killer, is on a phone saying, see you on the flip side, just like phone guy did all those years ago. Finally, I've been vindicated. Hello, Internet. Welcome to Game Theory, the show where every victory is bittersweet. You see, I should be super happy that I just had one of my oldest FNAF theories confirmed. Instead, I'm feeling haunted by the unsolved mysteries of the past. Let me explain. At this point in the series, I feel like we have a really solid understanding of the story. We know the broad strokes, we know the general timeline. The few big lingering questions that we've struggled with are starting to come into focus. Where's the placement of Sister Location? All the most recent games and books have hinted at its connection to the Fredbear era. What's the origins of Fazbear? Well, the books seem to be giving us more and more hints, pointing at the early days of William and Henry's working relationship. What was the deal with FNAF 4? Literally, the final tale of the Pizzaplex all but spells it out for us. All of those are probably theories best saved for a later date, but today, I wanted to focus on something else. Clues that we've all completely missed. The times when this franchise has explicitly tried to tell us something and we've utterly failed to pick up on what is laid down. Let me be clear, I'm not talking about me overanalyzing some minor detail of the game world. I'm talking about very clear puzzles that were very obviously set up by the game makers for us to solve that we've been unable to do anything with. And the reason I'm calling it out now is because they're starting to add up. In my estimation, there have been no less than 4 of these sorts of major puzzle moments. At least 3 of them are connected, and it's been going on for the better part of 6 years. So now that we're all done fangirling over Doug's apps, before Help Wanted 2 drops and adds a whole new layer of mysteries to solve, I wanted to take a minute to stop and see if now, finally, we were able to solve these mysteries once and for all. The pieces are in place for us. The question is, are we able to put them together? The first one of these is also the most recent, so it should come as no surprise to see me bringing it up here. The tally marks codes that we found hidden throughout FNAF Ruin. For those of you who have no idea what I'm talking about, in the newest game, right before you reach Bonnie Bowl, there's a corridor with a number of real doors, as well as several blocked off AR doors. If you walk through one of the real-life doors, you'll find a room full of baby plushies. This is already a bit weird because the game makes it a point to call out the fact that Baby, Should Not location and the FNAF 4 house are all practically built on top of each other, or at the very least exist as one connected series of buildings. We go into the basement of the Pizzaplex only to find the FNAF 6 location. In a secret ending of Ruin, we see a version of sister location Scooper deactivating the Mimic. And in one of the final Tales of the Pizzaplex stories, we read about how the FNAF 4 house is connected to Circus Baby's entertainment and rentals. So really, to answer Cassie's question, the baby plushies are here because they all share a connected history. A history that is gradually being excavated layer by layer underneath the Pizzaplex. Anyway, in this room, the dolls laugh at you, and then, when you turn around, they disappear. That's not all that surprising. But what is surprising is what remains in the left-hand corner, right where the plushies sat. You'll find a chair turned to face the corner and a sequence of tally marks carved into the wall. And these aren't just random markings either. They're specifically in groups of 2s, 4s, and 5s. And they're grouped in such a way to suggest words, or at very least, separate letters. Now, that alone would be weird, but an even bigger, clearer display of tally marks appears again about an hour later into the game. Behind bowling alley. Not only does this area show us the special relationship that existed between Freddy and Bonnie, if you put on the Vanny mask, on the wall over top of the pin-loading staff bot is another code, much larger and much more organized than the one that we just saw before. And once again, all the tally marks here are specifically grouped into 2s, 4s, and 5s, no 1s or 3s in sight. They are obviously meant to be connected. They are obviously trying to tell us something, but we are obviously not getting the message. So what can we do? Well, the first answer is to try a substitution cipher. Tally up the numbers and swap in the appropriate letters. Notice though that the tally marks are weirdly spaced out, which led a bunch of us to believe that we're supposed to be using those spaces to define each letter, adding up the numbers that aren't separated by the space. So the top line there is going to be 4, then a space, then 544, which would add up to 13. Pretty darn self-explanatory system here. Doing that for the whole thing gives us a code of 4, 13, 6, 19, 4, 17, 7, 4, 16, 10, 8, 7, 27, 19. Which, if you do a standard number to letter conversion, gives you this. DM, F, S, D, Q, G. You know what, I'm just going to leave it there. Clearly, this isn't working. It's just a bunch of random letters. You'll also notice that there's a 27 in that number mix, which should have been our first red flag, considering that, you know, there's only 26 letters of the English alphabet. But Reddit user T-Girl Lunara wasn't deterred. Because the alphabet doesn't have 27 letters, they instead took it a step further and tried the whole thing as a shift cipher. A shift cipher is similar to a Caesar cipher, but instead of the numbers converting into standard letters, like A1, B2, C3, etc., you instead mix up or shift the order in some way. So now, for instance, A is 7, B is 8, C is 9, and so on. Normally in a Caesar cipher, the alphabet then loops back around, so if A was 7, Z would then equal 6, and in a shift cipher, that doesn't happen. The numbers just carry on as is. So in this case, if A equals 7, then Z would equal 32. For this particular instance, T-Girl Lunara put A equaling 4, which meant that 27 was now X, and gave us the entire code of add, and damage XP. Not a lot of lore significance to that one. But I did want to continue down that path. So we tried hundreds of different shift and Caesar ciphers. They all came out as absolute gibberish. We also tried just unscrambling words. Maybe there was another arrangement in there that would give us a more cohesive answer, but yet again, more gibberish. Another solution was presented by user Smartfella Fartsmella, great name there, who also tried adding up the numbers, but this time they didn't do it by adding up the numbers in each group, but instead the numbers in each column. Again, notice the odd spacing of all these tally marks. Can't be a coincidence, right? The first column contains a 4 and 5, so that would be 9. The second is just the 2, next up is 5, so on and so forth down the line. Ending up with this code. 9.
Introducing Full Tank Active. New styles, new colors, new stretch, new feel. Old Navy, no moves.
Nine, 2, 5, 9, 13, 7, 10, 8, 21, 16, 20, 14, 17, 8, 2, 5, 4, 4. This felt promising to me, because unlike last time, we only had numbers that fell within the alphabet. So converting all of these numbers into letters, we got ourselves the following. I, B, in the bed. We once again went through with all the classic seizure ciphers and word unscramblers and all that stuff. Once again, wound up with nothing. Back to the drawing board for the third time. An anonymous poster uploaded this on Imager. At the same point was later brought to my attention by Reddit user NoRate. Basically, what they pointed out was that the tally marks in the corner of Baby's room make a 5x5 grid. A grid that, when rotated or flipped, can map perfectly onto the tally code that we see on the wall of Bonnie Ward. NoRate actually took this information and pointed out the fact that the main grid arrangement seems to line up with something known as a Bolivia cipher, which uses a 5x5 grid of letters to scramble or unscramble codes. Basically, a number code like 53 would mean that you go along the top to 5 and then down 3, and boom, that right there is the letter for your phrase. And while it certainly seems promising at first, sadly the method also came up short. Though we use 4s and 5s as the tally marks, the grid wasn't really giving us any information that we could use to decode.
Not really.
We needed an entire alphabet,
We're working on
not
it.
just a few random tally marks. The same held true for another famous 5x5 code cipher, the Playfair cipher, which requires a code word to use. What could that code word be? Who knows? Did it feel like we were actually starting to make some level of progress here? Yes, absolutely. But did any of it yield us any results? No. But here's where things get really interesting. This isn't the first time FNAF has stumped us with tally marks. Rewind backwards 6 years, my friends, to the release of the Freddy Fazbear Security Logbook, home to my two oldest and greatest nemeses, the Foxy Grid and the Dabbing Chico. For those of you who haven't been a part of the community for that long, let me quickly tell you that this seemingly innocent children's workbook was pivotal for decoding FNAF 4, for giving us the name of Cassidy, for frustrating us to no end with seemingly unsolvable number puzzles. The most notorious of them all was the Foxy Grid, a numeric grid with a hidden alphabet written into its squares, a grid that we still haven't figured out the use of to this very day. You ever read Moby Dick? At least are you familiar with the story about how Captain Ahab's obsessed with killing this giant white whale? This right here, this Foxy Grid, that is my white whale. This thing haunts my nightmares. This grid keeps me up at night, which honestly are two very contradictory effects of this one grid on my sleep habits, but that is how infuriating this thing is. I am convinced that this grid will eventually give us the name of the prime child. I just don't know how yet. Anyway, one of the other clues that never really got a proper use out of this thing were a series of tally marks that were found throughout the book. The fact that they're in red pen tells us that they were written by Mike. Other than that, we don't really know anything about what they were trying to say to us. And so they lingered on in the back of my brain for half a decade. Why am I bringing them up now? Well, I wondered if there was a possible connection between these two tally marks. You know, besides them just being tally marks. Guess what I found? Groups of 4s and 5s only. Yet again, we find ourselves with a collection of tally marks carrying over the same specific sets of numbers. Are they connected, or is this just a random coincidence? Not really sure, but the fact that tally marks keep getting brought up and also keep stumping us, that's just a wee bit infuriating. And yet the games still aren't done with this puzzle. You see, the tally marks are connected to yet another part of the franchise, Security Breach. Back during my playthrough of the original Security Breach, this room in the daycare section really caught my attention.
I'm noticing that 2, 4, and 5 are different, which is weird. As someone who has dealt with a lot of codes and ARGs and things, that feels suspicious. I agree. 2,
That's
4,
suspicious.
5. 2 years before Ruin, some element, some essence of this tally code was still kicking around. Now, the numbers were being matched with colors. And so Reddit user Comfortable Map 7594 took those tally marks and used these colors to create a sort of paint by numbers graphic, which I absolutely adore as a possible solution, though I absolutely hate the fact that it didn't seem to produce anything. Let me know down in the comments. Do you see anything here? Because to me, all I'm seeing here is me getting depressed. So maybe we just take a break from trying to decode these things and instead take a minute to look at the world around these tallies to get a sense of who might be speaking here. As I mentioned, in the security logbook, we know it's Mike, based on the red pen and the signature at the front of the book. But what about Ruin? Well, in the baby plush room, we have, obviously enough, baby. Not that shocking. What's especially important to note here is that they're not all baby. See, half the plushies are normal baby, and the other half are scrap baby. What's the big difference? Well, besides the obvious scrap metal plates on their bodies, there's one thing that alternates depending on the version. Something that's been important to baby since the very beginning. Her eye color. The regular baby plushies have blue eyes, while scrap baby has green eyes, showing the two sides of baby before and after Elizabeth's death and possession. Well, Reddit user Dylan Hippyjing took it one step further. They noticed that the eyes of the baby and scrap baby plushies were scratched out, leaving just the blue right eye for baby and the green left eye for scrap baby. That right there, that is a compelling detail, because it directly matches up to the evil entity that we've been battling against throughout the entire game, the Mimic. You see, in the story Tiger Rock, the Mimic AI program takes the form of the digital
There we go.
Tiger Rock, a tiger animatronic with a green left eye and a balloon right eye. Is this confirming
Oh,
to
yeah.
us that the mimic AI and baby are somehow
I don't
one and
even
the
think
same?
Alien
Or
Engine
maybe
doesn't
the
even remember
mimic
that.
has controls or entities that it learned from, just like how Baby in the books is two children in one, Elizabeth and Charlie. Not really sure, but that right there, that is a massive revelation that feels super important to solving the mystery. Or at least it did, until I dug a bit more and found out that the square plushies also sometimes have their left eye missing. It is still a very cool, compelling connection
This purple, I love it. And it's so aggravating to work with.
Chair, meanwhile, looks like a disciplinary measure. A bad child that was put into timeout, forced to face into a corner and scratching away at the wall to count hours or days out of boredom. Since this is a room full of ghostly baby plushies, it stands to reason that the punished child here could have been Elizabeth. Obviously not physically here in this room of the Pizzaplex, but with this scene recreating a recurring moment from her past in some ghostly spectral way. We know Afton wasn't really the greatest dad to her, maybe similarities end. These marks appear in AR land, as opposed to babies, which are in the real world. This implies that whoever made Bonnie's marks either had the Vanny mask at some point, or is connected to the digital network that's running the Pizzaplex. Bonnie's marks are also higher up on the wall, as opposed to babies, which are at floor level, easily reachable by a small child. So then, why these two rooms specifically? Well, a few things come to mind. If Baby is, in fact, connected in some way to the Mimic, and or the neural network that runs the Pizzaplex, we can guess that Bonnie is too. When we deactivate the wet floor bots around the Pizzaplex, we also end up deactivating Bonnie. So that connection into the wider Pizzaplex interface may be important here. We also know that both Baby and Bonnie are quote-unquote missing from the Pizzaplex. Baby isn't supposed to be here, according to that AR description, and Bonnie was decommissioned from the complex. Again, they're obviously loose threads, but in a puzzle with no clear answer that somehow connects two very random, historically unrelated characters like Bonnie and Baby, every small detail here is absolutely worth considering. But that's more than enough talk about tally marks. Let me remind you of yet another numerical code that was just blatantly given to us by the devs that us as a community have been largely unable to solve. Remember those Mylar balloons that I was just freaking out about in Superstar Daycare? Well, they have themselves yet another appearance right here, on the 8th hole of Security Breach's Monty Gator Golf arcade cabinet. On this Balloon Boy themed hole, we get this.
3192. That's suspicious.
A handful of numbered balloons. In reality, the number sequence is actually a lot longer. 6369553192. The fact that these are in Monty Gator Golf immediately made me wonder whether this code was the score they had to get in the game, except there are 10 numbers and only 9 holes. So when has simple math ever stopped the internet? User 00core00 tried a number of different combinations to see whether they could activate anything. Sadly, nothing. Then Ruin released with a new Monty Gator Golf arcade cabinet, so people like Yusuf0808 tried again using this exact same code and still wound up with nothing. Here's the thing though, both of these games have been data mined to heck and back. If this code was meant to unlock something inside of Monty Gator Golf, we'd have heard about it already, which leads me to believe that it's something actually outside of the game. Much like I suspected with the tally mark, it's not about activating some hidden ending, it's about giving us a code, a cipher, a phrase that'll tell us something about the wider world. We just haven't figured out how to use it yet. I've tried converting the letters, ciphers, you name it, just keep coming up empty-handed. One of our writers even suggested trying hex codes to see if there might be the first half of the numbers about anything meaningful. Maybe the fact that these are Mylar balloons connected to the multicolored Mylar balloons in the daycare, which then also connects them back to the tally mark puzzle, or maybe I'm just desperately looking for answers where there are no answers to be had. Now, for all of these lingering puzzles, I was able to find at least a couple of people discussing them online, in Discords, forums, Reddit posts, what have you. But for this last one, nothing, or at least practically nothing. I could find only 2 posts total, which is exactly why I wanted to raise some awareness about it here, because to me, this seems like a massive clue that largely got overlooked during the wave of reveals that happened throughout Ruin. Early on in the game, we have a chance to revisit the daycare attendance room. This room is nothing new to a FNAF theorist. It was the one that we were able to unlock in Security Breach by photographing random characters throughout the game world. Inside of it, we were able to find the glitchy Balloon World arcade cabinet, a lost relic to a seemingly incomplete path inside the game. So when the room showed up again in Ruin, I wanted to pay extra attention. On the surface, the room seems largely the same, just a bit messier than before. Boxes of stuff, clothing hanging from the wall, some post-it notes scattered around, but then by putting on the Vanny mask, everything resets to normal. The room basically goes back to the way that it was, clear, more organized, nothing all that noteworthy, until of course you start talking about the notes. Those are worthy. All of a sudden on a blank wall, we get ourselves a 3x3 grid of post-it notes. What is it with Steel Wool games and post-it note lore? I mean, if I had a nickel for every time Steel Wool used post-it notes to hint at lore, I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice. The 9 post-its that we're dealing with are as follows. One that's in the candy. As usual, my first thought was to jump into a cipher. Immediately you see how some of these post-its can relate to numbers. We have 2 feet, 4 stars, 7 dots, 3 butters, 3 lightning bolts. Felt like a really solid place to start, but obviously it wasn't going to be perfect. We have a pizza post-it, but are we counting the 2 slices of pizza, the 4 hearts, or both? What about that squiggle? What's that stand for? Nothing? How about the hill of the sun? Is this meant to be
Liking that a little bit more now.
hill, so maybe we're counting gravestones, or more likely counting the number of rays coming off the sun. Overall, converting the post-its to numbers wasn't really given the cleanest solutions, but it did feel like a step in the right direction. From there,
Thanks for making mortgage rates make sense.
That's what TD Mortgage Direct is here for.
Because sometimes we feel bad. Even when it's for their own good. Give more love than humanly possible. When you feed a Hills scientifically proven formula. Because you're only human, there's Hills.
Slow melting, smooth coating, long lasting. Cadbury Dairy Milk.
there, when you look up how to solve 3x3 ciphers, the #1 solution that pops up is the Hills cipher. Now, when it comes to codes, a Hills cipher is pretty darn complex, but overall, the key to deciphering one is a matrix, table of numbers. And if you're using the English alphabet with its 26 letters, you're gonna need yourself a 3x3 matrix. Or, let's just say, a 3x3 grid of post-it notes. The numbers in the matrix represent the shifts that you're going to have to apply to each letter of the alphabet. To encode a message using a Hills cipher, you first convert the message in numbers. You can do this by assigning each letter of the alphabet a number from 0 to
We're gonna
5.
go with
For
this.
instance,
I don't
A
like it,
would
I
be
can
0,
retain
B
it.
would be 1, and so on. Next, you multiply each letter of the message by the corresponding matrix. For example, if the first letter of your message is A, you would
There we go.
multiply it by the first row of the matrix.
I don't like the
If second
dots,
letter
but it is what it is.
You would multiply it by the second row.
Well, that was a boring live stream.
Number which you then convert back into a
Oh, my bones! Oh, God. I'm gonna call it a night. Thank you guys for stopping by. And I'll see you in the next one. Good night.
Like I said, it's a pretty